Hello fans! We'd love your support to the channel by like and share our videos so we can keep present more amazing stories. If you've watched all the previous parts of this story, you can find the new episode starting at this minute. Our story begins in the mountains near the house of a hunter named Vincent. One night he hears a baby crying near his home. Vincent thinks there's a thief nearby and says, "Who's this thief whose mother cursed him? I'll cut him in half. Does he come to rob a hunter's house? Is he crazy?" Vincent follows the sound and is surprised to find a baby. He decides to adopt him. 13 years pass, and we see the baby grown up. He's telling us the story. His name is Chiron, and his adoptive father, Vincent, now 40 years old, comes to take him home. On the way, they meet some children who say hurtful things about Chiron, like how his real parents abandoned him, and how he always spends time with books. Vincent feels hurt by this and tells Chiron, "You've been a good boy today. Let's go to the city to buy some fruit and books you like." Chiron is very happy and excited, especially because he wants to get books about magic. The last story he read had magic in it, and he wants to learn more. They go to a city called Crias in the kingdom of Tormaya. When they arrive, Vincent tells his son, "Stay here by this old man's shop and don't go far while I finish my work here." Chiron agrees and helps the old man a little, especially since he can read and write. Later, Chiron asks the old man about magic, but the old man says he doesn't know much about it. He tells Chiron there's a nearby library where he can find books about magic. Chiron gets very excited and goes right away, telling the old man, "Don't worry, I'll go and come back quickly." When he gets to the library and tries to touch a book, the library owner gets angry and says, "These books are very expensive, not for poor people like you. Don't touch the book or it will get dirty and become useless." Here we see how racist this woman is. An important-looking person comes in and takes some books. During this time, Chiron quickly looks through some books and leaves the place sad. He says to himself, "It seems getting a book is very difficult. How did my father get books then?" Then he notices someone carrying many books and follows him. He sees the person throwing the books on the ground. Chiron thinks, "Maybe this is where my father used to get books from." Chiron is very sad and sees some nobles. He wonders, what's the difference between them and me? Why do they get knowledge, money, and power, and I don't? He approaches two of them, but a guard comes and says, "What are you doing here, boy? This place is off limits to people like you." Another guard comes and says, "I'm suspicious of how you look. Come with me." He grabs Chiron's jacket, but Chiron runs away, leaving the jacket behind. He says to himself, "My father has gotten me into trouble." Chiron stands near a wall and hears someone say, "Today we'll learn about magic." Excited, Chiron puts his ear to the wall, smiling. The wizard talks about magic and its importance, saying a great wizard needs good insight. Chiron wonders, where does this insight come from? Until the wizard starts explaining insight, and Chiron finally understands. Suddenly, the wizard says, "I can read your thoughts, little child, and I like your thinking." Chiron gets confused and thinks, should I run now, or what should I do? He decides to climb the wall to see what's happening behind it. Chiron enters and sees the old man sitting under a tree with children, explaining magic. The old man invites him to spend time with them. We learn he's a 4th-level wizard named Mehri. Place is the Knights Academy of Magic. Chiron smiles at the wizard, but the children shout that he's not noble and should be kicked out. Mary calms them, saying, "I invited him." Chiron approaches and says, "I want to see magic." The wizard laughs and asks if he's seen magic before. Chiron replies, he's only seen it in books. The children accuse him of lying, saying he's poor and can't access magic books. But Mary says, "I'll show you some wind magic." Mary uses his magic to make them all fly in the air. Chiron really enjoyed it. Afterwards, he talked with the wizard a bit and asked about what magic is. The children thought Chiron was rude for talking to the wizard this way, but the wizard told him magic is an act that deviates from the normal logic of things. Mary said, "You probably don't understand because it's difficult for you." But Chiron says it's easy, and he wants to learn magic even if it's hard. Mary says, "This boy is very smart. His problem is, he's common." Then Mary asks a girl to enter the spirit realm. Chiron is puzzled and asks, "What's this spirit realm?" When the girl enters it, Mary says, "Tell me how many coins are in my hand." Surprisingly, she guesses correctly. Mary explains that when a wizard reaches the concentration level to enter the spirit realm, it becomes easy to guess even distant things, like the number of leaves on a faraway tree. He adds that this stage is the real beginning for a wizard in the world of magic. Mary asks Chiron to practice and master this, saying anyone can do it, but not everyone knows how. Mary tells Chiron he can't learn magic unless he enters the spirit realm. Chiron smiles and feels a new sensation, as if in a completely different world, but he's not entirely sure. Mary praises Chiron's performance and asks him to practice more. Then he announces the end of the special lesson and asks the children to return to their classes. It turns out Mary is the director himself, and he sadly says to himself, if this child were noble and had learned from an early age, he could have become a great wizard. Chiron left school, not believing what happened, describing the feeling as wonderful. He was running and accidentally entered an alley, bumping into someone who seemed to be from a gang. The man got angry and beat Chiron with his friends, and Chiron couldn't do anything. A little girl with red hair came and asked what was happening. They told her the boy wanted to kill them, but Chiron denied it and said he just wanted to leave. They continued beating him, so the girl said, "Let him go, we'll sell him as a slave." Chiron was very tired, and the girl thought about leaving him, but Chiron lost control and entered the spirit realm. He managed to control nearby animals and charm the winds, pushing everyone away from him, lifting them into the air and then dropping them all at once, breaking their body. The girl was amazed and asked him how he learned magic, but when people heard the noise, the girl ran away, and Chiron also ran away crying, saying, "Where are you, Dad? This world is too cruel." After that, we see a first-class palace, which we learn is the home of the red-haired girl named Amy. The girl was angry and spoke to her father, saying, "Dad, I want to learn magic. Enroll me in any magic academy." The father was surprised by her sudden request and asked her why she changed her mind. A long time passed, and winter came. The father was talking to the mother about Chiron and how he had changed since he saw him in the city in autumn. Meanwhile, Chiron was cutting trees and saying to himself, "I haven't been able to use magic again since that incident, but I can enter the spirit realm and feel everything, even the essence of the tree." Chiron managed to cut the tree with one axe strike, and his father was watching him from behind a tree, amazed at what he saw. Chiron's strike made a strange sound like thunder. Chiron said to himself, "I succeeded this time in breaking the tree with one strike, but this happens once every 100 attempts. I need to master this." 3 years passed, and Chiron became proficient in the spirit realm. He was collecting firewood and returning home when he saw a fancy carriage and wondered about visitors. Upon arriving home, he found the head servant of the Login family, T. Moran. T. Moran smiled and said, "I need you for a job at the house. The family will create a new secret library and want to move the books. Our task will be to sort the books, but it's a secret mission. If anyone other than you and your family knows about it, you'll all die. You'll get a good amount of money for it." Chiron thought to himself that a second-rank family must have useful books he could read, but the man told him he would only sort the books, not read them. Vincent, Chiron's father, angry when he learned the man was treating them like beggars and was about to throw him out, but Chiron said, "I'll go with you. I need this job." The father was surprised by Chiron's words, but Chiron assured him he knew what he was doing. The head servant told Chiron he had a week to think about it, and if he refused, that was fine. But once he entered the castle, he wouldn't leave until the task was finished. After the man left, Chiron and Vincent cried while hugging each other. Chiron thanked his father for this gift. A week passed, and Vincent signed the contract, and they took Chiron with them. The mission would last 2 years. Chiron entered the carriage with the people who came to take him, and he entered the spirit realm to hear his parents crying. He decided not to cry, and to learn to live among these people and gain their admiration to become someone important. We learned that the family's home is in a city called Ceres, and most family members are high-level swordsmen and knights. The city is close to the capital. Chiron finally arrived at the beautiful palace, and his escort warned him, saying, "Be careful with your words, as this family's temperament is very difficult." They arrived at the palace, where Chiron moved to another tower housing the library and servant quarters. There, the head servant explained the rules. Work from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., and the rest of the day is free for him, provided he doesn't leave or enter the castle without permission. They entered the huge library filled with books, and Chiron was amazed by it. The head servant explained his task, bringing the book list daily for transfer, and also starting to learn the etiquette of serving the family. Chiron realized the difficulty of the task and the complexity of classifying the books, because there were so many and different classifications. Chiron began reading the books secretly in his free time. One day, the head servant noticed his long hair and dirty clothes, ordering him to take care of his appearance. On another night, the head servant found him sleeping on a book about the kingdom's history, muttering sarcastically about his high ambitions. 3 months passed, and Chiron began to understand how society works, denouncing the nobles' exploitation of the poor. One day, Ozan, a family member, entered hiding under Chiron's desk, seemingly running from someone. A bald man with a long beard followed, threatening to kill Chiron if he didn't reveal the foundling's location. Chiron was forced to tell him, which angered Ozan later. In 4 months, Chiron read 82 books, mostly about magic history. He pondered the relationship between sorcerers and researchers, realizing he hadn't reached the sorcerer level yet, but hoping science would help him in the future. Later, Ozan confronted Chiron angrily for telling the teacher his location, saying this teacher made him climb the mountain many times, and challenged him to a duel with wooden swords. Chiron found himself in a dilemma. Either hit Ozan and risk losing his job, or pretend to lose and risk injury. He missed 2 strikes, with one final attempt left, while Ozan mocked him. However, Chiron activated the spirit realm and broke the sword with 1 strike, as he would break a tree. Ozan was amazed and asked, "Where did you learn this?" Chiron replied, "I used to collect wood with my father, but my body is weak, so I learned the thunder strike from breaking wood to compensate for my weak body." Ozan didn't believe it, remembering when he was 15 and faced a family member named Ray, who did the same move, and everyone saw him as a great and unparalleled swordsman. Ozan angrily gave Chiron a real sword, saying, "You have a month to learn swordsmanship, and come face me. Don't try to run away because I'll come and kill you if you do." Chiron replied, "But I don't know how to use a sword." Ozen responded. You learned the thunder strike from wood. I don't think this will be difficult for you. Afterward, Kirin sat thinking to himself, the Ojin family is supposed to be half and half. Half with black hair and half with blue hair like Ozen. We have the gray-haired patriarch with black hair, and he has 3 children. The eldest son with black hair, an 8th grade warrior. The eldest daughter with blue hair, also strong with the sword, but loves music more. And finally Ray, also a genius swordsman. There's also Ryan, different from his 3 siblings because he's not talented. He said to himself, Ozen has always been arrogant, so no doubt I hurt his pride by being a poor commoner. It doesn't matter. I'll manage. I was born in the mountains, which means I have endurance. Then he took out some books about dueling and smiled, saying, I only learned defense, but my chances of success will increase. After that, we see Ozen training hard, to the point that his teacher asked him, why are you doing this to yourself? Did Ray learn something new? Ozen replied, it's none of your business. I just want to get stronger. The teacher responded, if you die, it's not my problem. Then we see Chiron reading a book and extracting a diagram of the human body, saying, sorcerers have the spirit realm, and we have this human body diagram that leads you to the best possible physical form, enabling you to control every atom of your body. Chiron says to himself, this seems to be the opposite of the spirit realm, because in the spirit realm you feel everything around you, and here you feel every atom of your body. He adds, I must learn it, and tries, but of course doesn't succeed on the first attempt. He decides, it would be foolish to learn the diagram, which is the opposite of the spirit realm that I don't know how to do, because I don't have enough time. I should focus on more important things like learning the 8 cutting directions, which are fundamental to swordsmanship. We see that Ozen is still training and doing his best to the point that his teacher tells him, stop, enough. Ozen looks sad because he can't reach this diagram either, but he says, I won't stop. Chiron is also tired from training but says, I must win and raise my father and mother's heads high. They continue to train hard and neither gives up. Chiron says, duelists are just like the desert, choosing a path they walk for their entire lives. The month passes, and the time comes for the duel between him and Ozen. Ozen smiles at Chiron, but Chiron avoids the strikes and keeps his nerves, which annoys Ozen more. Over time, it becomes difficult for Chiron to avoid the strikes because Ozen's sword is heavy and hard to dodge, but it's also fast. Chiron acts wisely, and Ozen tells him, finally, you understood, peasant. This is the family's fighting style. We use swords that we strike with, capable of splitting you in half. The second attack from Ozen comes with the same tactic. Chiron says to himself, boy, stupid or what? He could have beaten me and killed me if he used faster and less complicated techniques. These are just normal strikes capable of killing me. He adds, boy lacks insight. Take advantage of this. He doesn't know how to use the sword well, so I must attack. Ozen is surprised by Chiron's attack and says, how can I not stop him? He's using primitive strikes, but they're difficult to block. Chiron says to himself, Ozen's physical ability is starting to collapse. I must continue at the same pace. Ozen remembers what happened between him and Ray in the past, gets angry and says, don't play with me, you lowlife. I'll be the best swordsman on earth. His sword technique suddenly changes, becoming literally invisible movements. Kirin finds it difficult to predict, but tries until Ozen jumps towards him quickly and delivers a decisive strike from below that almost kills Kirin. But at the last moment, Kirin changes the path of Ozen's sword and flies, thus winning this epic battle. Ozen starts crying like a child and says, I lost again. You can kill me now or do whatever you want since you've beaten me. Chiron replies, do you think if I killed you, I'd get out of this place? I entered this fight foolishly from the start, and the whole thing from beginning to end is absurd. Then they cry together a little, and in the end, Ozen extends his hand to Chiron saying, my name is Ozen. What's your name? He answers, my name is Chiron. Ozen says, okay, Mr. Chiron, I want to be your friend. Then we see that they have finished categorizing more than 7,000 books out of 10,453. The head servant was pleased with Chiron, who set himself a goal of reading 850 history books, with only 200 left to read. One day, Ozen sits with Chiron in the library and reads, then says, what boredom is this? How are you trying to read 800 books to become a sorcerer? I've read for only 10 minutes and felt bored. They laugh together for a while, and Ozen asks Chiron, do you think if there was a battle between a sorcerer and a warrior, who would win? Suddenly, Ray enters the library and praises Ozen, saying, so you're reading. Surely you've heard of the Fifth Lord's anti-magic armor. He explains that facing a sorcerer in the spirit realm is like facing a shark in the sea, but wearing this armor makes it more like facing a blind shark that's easy to defeat even if it's incredibly strong. But he adds that this is just a theory because the technique is very old and made from magic flowing from the dragon's heart. Plus, it's extremely expensive. Ray says that one piece of this armor is worth the entire kingdom's budget for a whole year. Ray says says sorcerers are pitiful because they created these armors, essentially selling themselves and their weaknesses for money. Chiron responds that they do it primarily for their benefit, as this technique is used in schools and places where magic is forbidden, not just for money as Ray claims. Ray gets tired, and Chiron and Ozin laugh at him. Tells Chiron, "Your tongue is sharper than a sword, by the way. You could use this tongue instead of a sword." 6 months pass after this incident. Chiron has finished his work, organized everything, read the 800 books he wanted, and remained friends with Ozin. On the day he's supposed to leave, a servant asks the head servant, "Shouldn't we keep Chiron for a while? I think we need him." Ozin comes and talks to Chiron, saying, "Are you leaving now?" Chiron replies, "I'll leave soon, but before I go, can I enter the palace to see how my friend will live after this?" Ozin agrees, and they enter the palace together. No family members were inside, and Chiron is amazed at how huge the palace is. They go to Ozin's room, which has so many swords that Chiron says they've entered a training room or something like that. They play games together for a while, like cards. And Chiron takes a novel from Ozin, saying, "It's been a long time since I've read history. I've never read novels before." As he's about to leave because night is approaching and the family will return, he hears a sweet piano sound and says, "This must be Reyna, Ozin's sister." Reyna sees him and asks, "Are you new here?" He replies, "No, I've been here for over a year arranging the library." She says, "You're very smart then. Have you ever played the piano?" He answers, "No," trying to be cautious with her because Ozin told him she's not an easy person. She says, "Don't be afraid. I'll teach you tomorrow. Come sit next to me now." Chiron feels something is wrong, but goes to sit beside her. Reyna tells him, "Don't be afraid. No one will hurt you as long as I'm the one who asked you to come sit." Sharon sits down, and Reyna says to him, "These are the basics." He asks her, "Can I play?" She replies, "Go ahead, press the keys." He smiles and starts playing as if he's a professional. Reyna is amazed by his beautiful playing and can hardly believe what he's doing. She wonders how this young man can be a servant when he's so talented, smart, and kind. It seems the sound of the music was loud. So Ozin comes in shouting, "Can you be quiet for a bit?" Then he discovers that Sharon is the one who played this piece, and Sharon looks very shy. Sharon and Ozin never told anyone before that they were friends. So Reyna asks Ozin, "How do you know him?" He replies that this is his friend. Sharon feels very embarrassed. So Ozin says to Sharon, "Don't trust my sister, she's a devil." But Sharon replies, "She seems nice." They all laugh for a while. Ozin asks his sister why she came. He tells him she came to take Rai to the certificate test, and that their grandfather will be coming soon too. We discover that this test is to choose the best wizard and the best knights in the entire kingdom. Every year, 1,000 people enter, and only 30 of them pass. You must have this certificate to be accredited, though you can have an unaccredited certificate from other places like the Fias Magic Academy. Sometimes unaccredited people are good, but this certificate is important too. Reyna says, "Okay, I'll go now. It was nice to meet you, Sharon. I hope to see you again." As soon as she leaves, Sharon says, "Me too, but unfortunately, I'll be leaving the castle tomorrow." Then he slips and asks Ozin, "Is your sister in a relationship with someone?" As soon as Ozin hears this, he rushes out to tell her immediately that Sharon likes her. The servants around her are shocked by what's happening, and one of them takes the opportunity to overhear this conversation, seemingly a high-ranking servant. Later, we see Ozin training, and a servant comes to tell him, "Go talk to Reyna quickly." He replies, "Let her gossip. I'm not interested right now." The servant says, "She says it's important. It's a matter of life and death. Sharon might die now." We discover that Ozin's father wants to kill Sharon because he learned that he's friends with Ozin and Reyna. Ozin tries to go to him and explain to the teacher, but the teacher refuses. We see the father saying to Sharon, "You will be executed." Reyna tries to save Sharon, but her father is very stubborn. The father asks Sharon, "Do you have anything to say before you die?" He replies, "Yes, I have one question. Will Ozin be hurt because of me?" The father answers. Sharon says, "That's very good because Ozin is my close friend, and I've known him for more than a year. I would have been sad if something happened to him." The father says, "You're crazy, boy. I'll kill you now." The head servant comes to take him, but Ozin arrives at the last moment and says, "I won't let anyone kill my friend." The father says, "This is not your friend. He's a lowlife trying to get close to you for your money and status." But Ozin gets angry and says, "He is my friend." Suddenly the father challenges his son, saying, Ozin is surprised and doesn't know what to say, as Sharon's life depends on his answer. He thinks, if Sharon were in my place, he would answer quickly without any problem, but I don't know what to do. I've got it. I'll think like Sharon. He adds, I need to analyze the nature of the person in front of me. He's my father and the head of the family, from the black hair branch, a knight and a 4th grade government officer. He says, this isn't a conflict between me and my father. It's just a battle. Ozin remembers the teacher's words, that this would put himself in danger, but since Sharon is his friend, if he abandons him, coward who doesn't defend himself. He tells his father, you're very smart. I would have stood by your side, but I really am his friend. If it comes to swords, I'll draw my sword against you now. And he actually draws his sword. The father says, are you crazy? You're raising your sword against me? Ozin replies, I'm not raising my sword against my father. I'm raising my sword to prove my principles. He adds, even if I leave this family and am considered a traitor, it doesn't matter. I must protect my friend. But Sharon stops him, saying, you don't have to sacrifice yourself. I knew from day one that I'd be putting my life at risk if I became friends with you. But this is my problem, and I have to bear it. The situation is very emotional, and everyone is crying. An old man comes and watches them, saying, what a wonderful scene. It seems this is the grandfather, named Cloeve, appears to be an expert in these matters. He takes the opinions of everyone who knows Sharon, including Reyna, Rai, and the head servant. They all say he's a good person and doesn't deserve punishment, but he was indeed Ozen's friend. Then the grandfather, as the former head of the family, decides to pardon Sharon. However, in return, end his friendship with Ozen because it will cause confusion outside the family and affect the family's social status. Additionally, Rai will be taking the exam soon, and they don't want any distractions. He asks Sharon if he agrees or not. Ozen refuses, shocking everyone. He says, Ozen is my close friend, and this is probably the last time I'll see him. I don't want our friendship to end for such a trivial reason. Ozen thinks to himself that Sharon understands the true meaning of friendship. Ozen strikes his sword on the ground and says, I swear from this moment on, I am Sharon's personal sword. Everyone is stunned, and we learn that this sword oath has existed since ancient times, from the beginning of the kingdom. In the past, kings in war wanted people close to them, close to the knight class, would make this oath. When you say it, you become a noble, and this is how noble families began to appear. If you break your oath, you become despicable. The grandfather says, is that so? Are you stupid to be a sword, or is he the best? Ozen replies, I'm just a sword. My job is to protect, not to speak about my master. The grandfather laughs and says, God help you, Sharon. You have a stupid assistant. He adds, well, since he swore you'll be friends forever and be your sword, I guarantee he's stupid, yes, but he'll never betray you. They sit down to talk, and then Reyna enters. We learn that the father wants to enroll them in the Kaizen Sword Academy. Reyna says, I know you defeated Ozen in swordsmanship, and you're very skilled with it. She tells him, you're now considered part of the family. Tell them about your talents, and they'll invest in them. Ozen gets angry and says, Sharon is a great wizard. He won't enter the Sword Academy. He can activate the spirit realm. Reyna laughs and says, so you lost in swordsmanship against a wizard? He gets angry and tells her, get out of here, you devil. He sees that Ozen's teacher has left him because he's going to the academy, which makes Ozen very sad. At this time, Sharon's parents come to see him, and they're very happy. Sharon goes to see them with the servants who treat him formally. He tells them, no need for this formality. They reply, do you want to get us killed? We must speak to you like this. As soon as Sharon sees his family, he hugs them and is very happy. He says to them, why have you become so thin? Haven't you been eating well? They tell him, don't worry. Why did you call us? Weren't you supposed to leave today? He starts explaining to them. His father doesn't believe what Sharon is saying and says, tell the truth. Are they holding you here? Tell the truth and I'll appreciate it. Or have you gone crazy from working here? Sharon tries to tell him that this is the truth, but he doesn't believe it until he sees the father, Ozen, and Reyna enter to greet them. Later, they have tea together. Vincent says to the father, I don't understand how this happened, and how the knight's oath can transfer my son to your son. The father replies, I don't understand it either, but we're a family that values oaths, so we'll honor it. We keep our word and won't back down. You and your son are welcome, and you're now part of our family. Make yourselves at home. I've learned that your son loves magic and has activated the spirit realm, which is not easy at all. We'll take care of him and enroll him in the Fias Magic Academy. 5 academies on the entire continent. The father adds, your son might become a great wizard someday. But Vincent doesn't believe it and says, be a dream. The father and grandfather explain that there's only one problem. The academy requires students to be noble, and his son isn't noble yet, even with the oath. They suggest adopting his son to make him part of the family so he can enter. Vincent asks if there's another solution. The father suggests using his immature cousin's name for Sharon, making him part of the family on paper only, not actually taking him away. Vincent finds himself in a very difficult position, but Sharon holds his hand and says, I don't agree. I'll never leave my father and mother. Reyna explains that it's just on paper. You'll become a noble and enter the school of your dreams, become a wizard, have money, and you and your family will live the best life. But Sharon still disagrees, saying, for me, staying a non-wizard, common, and poor is better than leaving my parents. They're the foundation. They taught me to read and write and cared for me. How can I leave them after all this? Without my parents, I wouldn't have even had the offer to enter this house. The father pleads, let him join the family. The grandfather says, we can't. He must agree first. Vincent, desperate, says, Sharon isn't my biological son. Everyone seems shocked, but the father thinks to himself that Vincent's words are probably true because Sharon doesn't resemble them. Sharon says, "I've known this for a long time, but do you want to abandon me like my birth parents did? You're really despicable." Vincent hugs him and says, "I'll never abandon you, but I don't want you to give up your dream." Everyone is moved by the situation. The father says to the grandfather, "Try to arrange something with the academy owner. Surely there's a solution." He replies, "I'll handle it." We see that Vincent and the mother also stay at the palace, partly because they aroused the father's pity, and also because Ozin and Sharon can stay together without problems. Finally, after 3 days, Ozin prepares to leave for the academy. He looks sad and says, "I wish I could stay with you longer, Sharon, but unfortunately, I can't." Reina goes with her brother and tells Sharon, "Don't worry, my grandfather will get you into the academy no matter what." She adds, "If you enter the academy and graduate," then she suddenly falls silent, and it seems she likes him, gentlemen. Reina couldn't finish the sentence she intended to say, but she told him, "We can help each other after that, time with your family." We'll see later that Sharon and Ozin's meeting is the event that will change the course of the entire world. We see that the grandfather was talking to the Magic Academy director to get Sharon into the academy despite not being noble. The grandfather speaks to Fias, saying, "It's clear that after all this, still haven't forgiven yourself. Although you've nurtured many talents over time and established this school." Fias replies, "How can I forgive myself after taking the wrong path?" The grandfather says, "Yes, the wrong path, but in the end you return to the right path, and that's what matters. I never imagined you'd end up an old man in a magic school after everything you did." After discussing Fias's past as the wizard who spoke to Sharon and taught him some magic tricks at the beginning of the story, the grandfather says that Sharon is like a small version of him. He suggests that Sharon be under Fias's watch to ensure he doesn't take the wrong path. He tells him, "Put him in your path twice. Once in the past when he came to you from the river because of me." Fias responds, "Potential is enormous, and it would be unfair to prevent him because of some unnecessary laws and beliefs. I'll accept him into our academy." We see that Sharon has learned about the news and told his family, who are very happy. They don't want their son to leave them again. However, it's all for achieving his dreams. Goodbye and leaves. And we see that he has cut his hair because Reina said this is common among nobles, and he's considered a noble now. He bids them farewell and rides in the carriage with the head servant towards the academy. He arrives at the academy, and before Sharon enters, he says to the head servant, "Thank you for everything you've done for me. Without you, I wouldn't have reached this position." The head servant replies, "Commoners will always remain commoners, and you should be careful because you've entered a place full of nobles who probably won't like you because you're from common people. But don't let this affect you. You must be stronger." Honestly, the words don't comfort Sharon, but he listens to the advice silently. After that, they enter the academy where registration takes place, and the head servant leaves after making sure Sharon doesn't need anything else. Sharon looks confused as he stands waiting for what will happen next. We know that this academy is known for producing elite wizards and operates on a different system called the 10th class system. It accepts 420 people each year, of which only 20 are top performers, and of these, 10 graduate each year. While Sharon is thinking about the difficulty of graduating, the director comes up behind him and says, "You must be Sharon." Fias asks, "Do you remember me or not?" Sharon replies, "Of course I remember you, and thank you for your time back then." Fias says, "You need to take the entrance exam." Sharon gets nervous and says, "I don't know anything." Fias laughs and says, "Don't worry, it's an easy test. Don't you know how to enter the spirit realm?" Sharon answers, "Yes." Fias says, "Well then, things will be good for you." Fias talks to himself, saying, "This boy's power is unbelievable. How did he know how to enter the spirit realm on his own? There are people under training who can't reach it." He adds, "All students in this exam are supposed to be around 10 years old. No matter, let's go early." Fias says to Sharon, "Tour the school a bit." They see the beginner class, which includes grades 10 to 8. Sharon is amazed because everyone here uses magic despite being young children. Then they enter the intermediate class, from grades 7 to 4. These students are all Sharon's age, but they seem like they're from another world, studying 100 hours a day. Sharon can't believe people like this really exist and smiles, but he notices a board with the top scores in the intermediate class. The highest score belongs to a girl named Amy Krems. Sharon says, "Everyone here is considered at my level, so no one is better than anyone else, but this Amy seems very advanced. I want to experience being on this board, not just being on it, but being first above them all. I must study hard." At this time, Sharon hears someone calling for Amy, and we discover that this Amy is the red-haired girl who controlled the people who beat Sharon in the alley when he went to the city with his father and left the library, if you remember. Sharon says to himself, "I hope she doesn't see me." Anyway, the girl with Amy notices Sharon and says to Amy, "Who's this handsome boy? Is he a new transfer to our school?" Amy says, "I don't know this boy, but I feel like I've seen him before." Amy's friend laughs and says, "Do you know boys behind my back?" Amy gets angry We learn that because Amy is beautiful, and one of the best, both older and younger students try to get close to her, but they all fail. They believe she's a beautiful and skilled girl like no other. Then we see them go to the area where the entrance exam is held. There's a boy standing in the middle of a circle with some words written in it. Phias tells Sharon, "You'll be in his place, so watch what he does." We see the boy enter the spirit realm, and the teacher asks him, "What number do you see?" He says 6. We learn that the diameter of his spirit realm circle is 6 meters. They ask him, "What color do you see most?" He says, "Red." They continue asking him some questions until they finish. The examiner says, "It's clear that this year's student quality is excellent, and every year the situation improves more than the previous year. So far, we have more than 12 strong students." It's Sharon's turn, and the teachers say to each other that this boy got in through connections. And while he might be good and better than most commoners, he's still a commoner and will be worse than the worst noble here. Sharon stands in the circle and they ask him, "Do you know how to use magic?" They say to themselves, "What's this?" But they continue since he came through connections. They tell him, "Enter the spirit realm." He does, and then they ask, "What number do you see beyond?" He says, "The number is very far, I can't determine it." They tell him, "No, you must focus and say what the number is." He focuses until he sees the number 3.14, and none of them believe it. They ask, "Are you sure?" These random numbers appear when the area is very large and bigger than the circle we created, because this circle's maximum diameter is 30 meters, which means Sharon exceeded it. "Okay, what color do you see?" He says, "The whole place is light blue." One of the teachers says, "Okay, how many spheres are in the place?" He says, 867 spheres. They are also in disbelief at what he's saying. Phias says to himself, "Now I know why the grandfather wanted to intervene for him. Boy is truly extraordinary." After that, the teacher says to him, "Thank you, but you all must leave so the judging committee can decide the best place for you." As soon as he leaves, all the teachers are amazed and say, "How can a 17-year-old child have a spirit realm exceeding 30 meters? And also, if the density were high, it would be very low." But this density of his spirit realm is more than 86.7. We discover that the spheres indicate the density of the spirit realm. One of them, who seems to dislike Sharon already, says, "It's impossible that this boy is lying." But no one pays attention to his words. The principal enters and asks them, which class should he enter. A 6th grade official teacher named Oliver suggests, "I think 5th or 6th would be suitable for him, and I think 5th would be best." But the thin boy objects again, and we learn his name is Sad, who is also a 6th grade official. Sad and Oliver start arguing with each other. The principal talks to another teacher who seems older and wiser. She says, "This boy lacks many basics, but if he enters a class like 10th or 9th, he'll be at a disadvantage and lose passion because he's with younger people. I think 7th grade is suitable for him. He'll be in the middle group among older students, but he'll also learn some basics." Phias agrees with her opinion and says, "It's settled. Sharon will be a 7th grade student." The intermediate group students focus on how to use the spirit realm, how to develop it, and how to improve their magic in general. From 3rd grade to 1st, these are the graduation classes, which are the hardest. Finally, Sharon joins the academy as he's dreamed since childhood. He enters the class for the first time and introduces himself, but the students are surprised because he's older than them and his way is different from theirs. We learn that classes end at 5 p.m., and the rest of the day is free for students to do what they want. One day, Sharon had a class on his schedule, but the location wasn't written. He didn't know where to go. He saw a purple-haired girl in the same grade and asked her, "Excuse me, where will the class be?" She replied shyly and fearfully, "Are you talking to me?" We learned from this girl that this is a shared class between them and upper grades to benefit from their skills. Sharon went to the class and noticed severe discrimination between older and younger students. They're very arrogant. We learned it's a spirit realm class, and the teacher is named Romy. From the 6th official grade, Romy started talking, saying, "Before we start the class, I should introduce you to the new student you're seeing for the first time. Or better, he should stand up and introduce himself." Sharon stood up and introduced himself, not wanting to stand for fear Amy would notice him. When he stood, Amy's friend said, "This boy looks amazing, and all the teachers are interested in him. I wonder which noble family he's from." Amy said to herself, "I'm sure I've seen this boy before. Where did I see him? I remember everyone I've seen in my life. Why can't I remember this boy?" But suddenly she remembered everything and recalled he was the boy who defeated her and her men. So she said, "Damn." We learned that Amy is from the Krems family, famous for their eyes that are different from anyone else's, which allow them to learn anything easily and focus their attention on every detail, like the Sharingan family in Naruto. It's easy for them to remember everything. Amy was one of the best girls in this family, and since childhood, she saw herself as better than everyone, and the rest were worthless to her, even her family, because no one could compete with her in strength, intelligence, or precision. But the day came when she met a lowly young man from the lower class, meaning Sharon, who literally defeated defeated her. She tried to forget this because every time she remembered it, she got angry and said, "How could someone as worthless as him do this to me?" But she wondered, how did he even enter this school? It's a school for nobles only. How did he get in? Does he remember or not? If he remembers, what will he do to me? He must have become much stronger than me. Surely he can easily defeat me now. Amy became very nervous, and everyone noticed it to the point that she accidentally tore a page from her book. Sharon felt her aura even while sitting far away from her, but Teacher Romy interrupted all this and began explaining, "Your spirit realm is very important, young people, because it's used to create spells and enter a place that makes your spiritual field visible to everyone." She said, "I've created a field around me with a 10-meter diameter, but the target is 20 meters away from me. I want to hit it with a fireball. Be able to because it's far from me, and the magic disappears as soon as it leaves my range." Indeed, she threw a fireball, but it disappeared as soon as it left the 10 meters surrounding Romy. Then she said, "Now I want to hit the target, but it's difficult to create a huge circle around me with a 20-meter diameter, so I'll change the shape of my spirit realm to become just a straight line to hit my target." And indeed, that's what happened. Sharon says to himself, "I never imagined this could happen, and that I could change the shape of my spirit realm." But Romy continues, saying there's a problem, which is that this consumes a lot of energy. So we came up with something easier, which is only 4 shapes we think about and use as needed: the defensive shape, the offensive shape, the intersecting shape, and the independent shape. These are called the 4 spirit realm patterns. Romy begins to explain each shape. For example, the defensive shape resembles a crystal, and it's difficult for anyone to penetrate it from the outside, and its strength increases as the number of crystal faces increases. She begins explaining one pattern after another, and the benefits and drawbacks of each pattern. But the most important and difficult is the independent shape, because the spirit realm literally leaves the magician's body and floats away from it. She says this is very difficult to do, and you must be one of the best magicians to be able to do it. But if you can learn it, then you'll have the upper hand in any fight, because it will help you in ways you can't even imagine. Romy finishes explaining and says to Amy, "To the stage, I want you to explain something to the younger ones." But Amy doesn't want to go up and says, "Damn, is this of all times when I'll go up on stage?" Amy has gone up to explain the intersecting shape to them, especially since she's one of the best students who know how to use this shape. She begins explaining the shape and says that this shape is good if you're going to face someone in only the 4 main directions, but it will be difficult to turn and hit fast targets, to become fast and keep up with quick targets. She shows them some of her abilities, and they're in disbelief at her power. During Amy's demonstration of her ability, her eyes meet Sharon's, and they share a long look, and everyone is amazed and says, "How did the new student manage to impress this girl? She has never accepted any of us in the school." But of course they don't know the truth. Amy says, "I shouldn't be a source of suspicion with this boy, and anyway, if he says anything about me, no one will believe him." We see that the training ended after that, and everyone took a break. After the break, they're supposed to continue training, and the 7th grade that Sharon belongs to will train on the defensive shape first among all shapes. But during Sharon's break, he thinks about the subject and says, "I think it will be difficult for me to shape my area because I don't know where it ends in the first place. But I think with the machine that Romy is standing on, I'll know where it ends." "Teacher Romy, can I use the machine?" She agrees and tells him, "Okay." He enters, and everyone starts looking at him, especially since he's becoming known for getting in through connections, and also because Amy looked at him. He goes and reveals his spirit range, which is initially very large, exceeding 20 meters. They're in disbelief because the largest range in the 7th grade is supposed to be only 13 meters. Sharon tries to shape it into a crystal form, but it's unstable due to his attempt to limit its size to avoid attention. He says, "This way I won't be able to focus on my goal. I should let my area's field take its ease." Indeed, he lets his range reach its full extent, exceeding 41 meters, and everyone can't believe what they're seeing. When he lets the range reach its end, he can control it and transform it into a crystal shape. Amy's friend says, "I now understand why all the teachers are interested in this boy. He has tremendous power. What do you think, Amy?" But Amy is angry and says, "Boy has a secret. He's very strong and came here through connections. How can a commoner possess such overwhelming power?" She says, "To change my plan of trying to stay away from him, I should get close to him and befriend him without anyone knowing, because this boy will change the balance of power between nobles and commoners in the future." We see Romy talking to Sharon and telling him, "Well done," and so on. And she's also amazed by the beauty of what he did. Now he can stand, and when he leaves his range, he sees that everyone is looking at him in amazement. So he wonders, what's the matter? Why are they looking at me like this? He notices that many people are amazed by what he did. Others are afraid of him, some envy him and see him as a rival, and others consider him a competitor and want to be better than him. The next day, a new teacher enters the class, Sina, the entrance exam. It's clear that all the children love her, and she's supposed to teach the 5th grade, but she's also impressed by his strength and wants to observe him closely, so she decided to teach the 7th grade as well. She'll teach them chemistry, and begins by explaining some things about magic and how to become a magician, clarifying that just as you need superhuman strength, you also need extensive knowledge that will enable you to use the power correctly, in addition to requiring training. She uses ice magic in front of them, and they're very impressed by it. Shirin says, "Now I understand why I couldn't use wind magic before. I was focusing on strengthening myself, but I forgot that I also need knowledge." We see that classes have ended, and Chiron is walking alone thinking, every day after classes, some go to train, some go to play, and I go to the library to learn. These people have so much information, and I don't have as much as they do. Suddenly he finds himself flying through the air and going to the forest where someone grabs him. It turns out to be Amy, the girl he met a few years ago. When Amy sees Chiron's facial expressions, she says, "I'm sure you're the right person." Then she creates a ball of flame and says, "There are things I need to settle with you today." She explains that what happened 5 years ago was a misunderstanding, and that he understood it wrong, but he replies, "I understand everything. You brought some bullies to scare people, didn't you?" She denies it, but Chiron thinks to himself that this girl doesn't want rumors to spread about her, especially since she's the top of her class and one of the most famous girls in the whole school, from a big noble family. Chiron tells her, "I want to end this silly conversation. Apologize to me, and let's end this headache." She says, "Okay, I apologize. But what guarantees that if I apologize, you won't tell the whole school about what happened?" He replies, "You're apologizing because you destroyed my mental state in the past, so the least you can do is apologize." She responds, "It seems you don't know how things work here. Do you know what the hardest thing in this school is, Chiron? It's to make an enemy of an older student because they can crush you, especially if they know the truth that you're a commoner and not from the noble class. Once this information is known, every student in the school will try to make you leave because you're below their level. Even some teachers might do that." Chiron thinks to himself that this girl plays the role of the kind and beautiful one at school, but she's the same sadistic person he met in the past. Amy wants to expel him from school if he spreads rumors about her, and he says that even if he did, no one would believe him. She tells him, "Look, I'm not evil, but I might expel you from school because I don't trust you. But you can become trustworthy if you bring me coffee every day at school and do some very unimportant tasks. Then I'll think about it." She angrily says, "If you think about telling anyone from the teaching staff about this, I'll burn you." He agrees, saying to himself after she leaves, "It seems this won't be as easy as I expected." The next day, we see Chiron bringing coffee to Amy in front of everyone. People can't believe he's approaching her so easily, but she says to him, "This coffee has spilled a lot. You must have dropped it." She embarrasses him in front of everyone and leaves him standing with his hand outstretched as she walks away. Of course, Chiron's face turns red from this situation. Chiron continues doing the same thing for 10 days, and rumors start spreading among students about Chiron and Amy's relationship, with some saying they're dating and in love. A close friend tells her, "Aren't you going to accept Chiron? Everyone's saying you'll accept him because you love him." Amy gets angry and says, At that moment, Chiron comes with the usual coffee cup. But this time, Amy throws the cup on the ground and says loudly, "Do you think you can fool me with a cup of coffee every day? You should be expelled from here." She leaves him and walks away. Everyone can't believe what happened and says how could she do that, be psychologically destroyed. She tells him, "Come here again." Chiron sits on the ground and says, "Did she tell me not to come here again? Think of my happiness." That same night in the library, Amy sits studying and is still thinking about what happened. She says to herself, instead of making him known as an annoying person and becoming the laughingstock of the school, a rumor spread that I love him, and I became the one everyone is talking about. I'm tired of this boy. Amy says, "I have the ability of the red eye, which simply means I can remember a person's appearance, expressions, and feelings in a certain situation very well." She adds, "On the first day, Chiron was sitting happily as he gave me the cup, but in the following 9 days, his appearance was boring. He was hiding his feelings, and he didn't seem to feel anything. How is that possible?" She continues, "This means one of two things. Either he knows how to control himself completely, or his heart is pure and has no hatred against me." After that, Amy finishes and leaves the library, but she finds someone waiting for her outside named Jake. He's from one of the wealthiest families on the continent, and his father headed something like the Ministry of Finance, meaning he's extremely rich. He tells her, "I've brought you an amazing coffee that no one else can bring, instead of that annoying boy Chiron's coffee." She says to him, "Are you stupid? Do you think you can talk to me?" and leaves. But before she goes, he says, "Do you know I can crush you and your family with money alone? If you ignore me now, you and your family will become history." Amy says to herself, just as Chiron's eyes were kind, this one's eyes are like those of a rabid dog wanting to kill you in any way. She tells him, "Leave me alone. It's better for you." He stops, so she pours his coffee cup on the ground, activates her spirit realm, and prepares to attack. He leaves saying, "You'll pay dearly for this." She says, "I deserve all this. I caused this whole situation, so I must bear the consequences of my action." We see that a message was given to Amy's friend saying, "I have Shiren with me. Come to me to hand him over. And don't tell the teachers." Signed, the Black Magician. Shiren tells the girl, "Did Amy go to save me? I must catch up with her. Someone tricked her and told her they kidnapped me." We see a glimpse of the past before Shiren received the message. We learn that a messenger came to Amy with this message, and her friend Cheryl tells her, "We should tell the teachers because it's very difficult." Amy thinks and says to herself, "If I tell the teachers, they might open an investigation, and then they'll know what happened between me and Shiren in the past. This is in addition to the possibility of discovering he's a commoner, and it would be a big disaster. I caused all this, so I must fix it myself because I have no other solution." Amy tells Cheryl, "I'll go, and if I'm not back by 7 o'clock, tell the teachers exactly what happened." We know she went to training ground number 14, located on the other side of the mountain adjacent to the school. For clarification, the school is very large, extending over an area of about 50 kilometers, including mountains and varied terrain, making it difficult to discover the entire place on your own. Shiren says, "I'll go to save her too. I'm the original cause of all this." As he runs, Cheryl grabs him and uses teleportation magic to quickly transport them to the mountains. This happens, but students see them and say, "Crazy student daring to use magic on academy grounds." When they arrive, they find no one. Shiren orders Cheryl to go inform the teachers, but she says, "But Amy said 7 o'clock. He replies, "Trust me, do what I say." So Cheryl goes to get the teachers. We see that Shiren is used to the mountains because he lived there for a long time, so he'll know how to act alone. He activates his spirit realm and smiles as he sees her footsteps, but suddenly there's a distant explosion and he sees smoke. He says, "I need to go there to see exactly what's happening." We see one of Jake's men trying to hit Amy, but the strike misses her. Then we see Jake coming with many of his men. He says, "Welcome our guest of honor today, men." Amy says, "Enough nonsense and silliness. Tell me now where Shiren is." They laugh and he tells her, "You'll find him sleeping," or something like that. "We didn't kidnap him, and he doesn't know what's happening here at all." She gets angry and says, "I guess there's no reason to leave you alive anymore." She starts hitting one of them with fire magic, and he literally catches fire. Then she starts hitting them one after another as they try to resist her but can't. One of Jake's men comes and says to him, "Are you crazy, man? You said she'd use the spirit realm in the intersecting form and we prepared for that. But what's this?" He answers, "This is what I saw in training and saw all her battles. I didn't know she uses other methods. But dear viewer, she's actually using it but at such high speed that you think she's using another style. But the flaw of this style is that it's ineffective against strikes from above." Indeed, Jake launches wind magic at her from above and says, "Prepare to die." But Amy easily avoids the strike and says to him, Okay, next time, I'll prepare to die." Then she changes the direction of one of her spirit realm arms and hits Jake while he's in the air, so he falls to the ground. Then she moves towards him to finish him off. But suddenly Amy screams in severe pain. Jake smiles and says, "Finally, you've fallen into the trap. This is anti-magic. If you try to activate your spirit realm again, you'll die." Jake approaches her and says, "It's over. There's no escape now. You've fallen into our hands." He takes out a knife and says, "Shall I disfigure your face so people stop loving and being attracted to your beauty? I have many ideas in mind that I want to do to you, beautiful." Amy says to herself, "Did Shiren feel the same way when I wanted to kill him? Did I cause him all this harm without realizing? I'm really evil. I deserve all this." Jake brings the knife close to her face, but we hear a voice from afar saying, "Shut up, you scoundrels, get away from her." It turns out to be Shiren, and we see him holding a stick in his hand, trying to defend Amy. The gang is surprised, saying, "What brought this boy here?" Amy tells him, "Are you crazy? You came alone and you don't know how to use magic?" Shiren says to himself, "I want to buy some time until the teachers come and end this situation." He pretends to attack and activates the spirit realm. They smile at him and say, "Come closer, you fool. Come closer." He rushes towards them, but it's too late, as he too has fallen into the anti-magic trap without knowing. But he continues to use the spirit realm, which could lead to his death. He starts to lose consciousness and doesn't know what to do, but he says, "Be stronger. I won't let a girl defend me." He activates the spirit realm defensively and repels the magic known as black magic, even making it rebound on them. He succeeds in hitting them all, and Shiren's aura appears strong, dense, and extremely cold. Amy is amazed at what's happening. Jake says, "We are 6 people here. How did he manage to defeat us so easily? At what level exactly is this boy's power?" Then Jake gets angry and says, "I'll kill you." He casts a wind magic spell at Shiren and says, "I'll cut off your 2 hands first, then your leg." But Amy gets up and starts hitting Jake, saying, "Enough. "You're really an annoying boy." She continues hitting him until Shiren tells her, "Enough, the boy will die in your hands." Amy stops and collapses from exhaustion. Later, she wakes up and tells Shiren, "We need to leave here before the teachers arrive." He replies, "Why? We're the ones who were attacked." She tells him, "You'll get into big trouble here and make your life difficult, so we need to escape and listen to me." As they're about to move, two teachers come and ask, "What happened here?" Shiren and Amy are about to explain what happened, but Jake gets up saying, "Nothing happened. I was challenging Amy to a duel to learn from her, but she received a threatening message from an unknown person that Shiren had been kidnapped. So she came angry." Sina asks Jake, "Why are you using anti-magic?" "I can still feel it." He replies, "Because Amy is one of the strongest here, and I was afraid she'd be angry and kill me. Look, my friends and I are all injured because of these two villains. We're the victims here." She asks, "What brought your friends here in the first place? Didn't you say it was a duel?" Tension rises, and Jake loses his temper. We see the teacher is angry too and uses ice magic, saying, "You used anti-magic here, and Shiran and Amy could have died because of you. This reason alone is enough to expel you from school now, without knowing anything else, because you admitted to using it." But he replies arrogantly, "Do you really think, teacher, that you'll be able to expel me or touch a single hair on my head?" Sad whispers in her ear that Jake's family donates huge sums to the academy every year. Jake hears this and laughs, saying, "Let me teach you a lesson today about the importance of my money in your lives." She says, "Okay, but let me teach you a more important lesson now." She uses her magic and literally covers him with ice, and this ice is sharper than swords, meaning if he touches it, he'll die. Sad tells her, "We're forbidden from killing students." She replies, "I know," playing with him a little, and she asks Jake, "How will your money get you out of here now?" Shiren says to himself, this is her true ability. That's why she was named the Ice Magic Genius. She leaves him and says, "You should know that you've annoyed your colleagues, and this isn't allowed for anyone, but we'll leave you." He says, "Yes, because of the lots of money, of course." She tells him, "Stand, you fool. With or without your money, we'll continue. We're here to teach you something priceless, to be a great wizard. Isn't this your dream since you entered this academy?" Jake remembers what happened and why he entered magic school in the first place, and that this is indeed his dream. So he cries and apologizes. But Sad doesn't forgive him for what he did, and puts him and all those with him in the punishment room to atone for what he and his colleagues did. Shiren and Amy remain for investigation. Sad asks them, "I'm trying to understand why, Shiren, you challenged people stronger than you and went to rescue Amy alone and didn't tell us everything that happened?" Amy says sadly, "I must reveal the truth to you. I don't know if the principal has told you or not, but the subject is a little known and important, and I won't be able to hide it. Shiren has been my lover for a long time, and that's why he came to rescue me alone." Everyone in surprise and shock says in one voice, "Shiren? What are you saying, girl?" Of course, the subject spreads in the school like wildfire, and Cheryl starts spreading the subject more and more, saying, "I saw everything with my own eyes." Sharon was scared for her and terrified, and she, as soon as she saw him, almost flew with joy. We see a flashback to the day of Chiron and Amy's incident, where she said that to avoid the topic. Sad asked her, "How did you become his girlfriend in just a few days?" She replied, "I saw him a long time ago when we were young, and I felt it was our destiny." Rumors began to spread in the school about Chiron and Amy, and the problem was that the rumors about Chiron were bad. They were saying, "What's with this stupid boy? Still new and doesn't know how to use magic, and he's become Amy's friend. What nonsense." In Kieran's 7th grade class, they also mocked him, saying to each other, "Did you see what happened? Kieran loves our older classmate Amy." They confessed to each other in front of the teachers during the investigation. He went alone like a brave knight to save her from the villain. The girl with frizzy hair was upset about what was happening, as it seems she likes Chiron. Another problem was that the exam results came out, and Chiron was last in all subjects. They said, "He really got in through connections. He doesn't understand anything. He entered the school with very low grades, while we work hard, pay money, and struggle to get into the school to achieve our dreams. This is unfair. He only came here to win Amy, and he doesn't care about studying and is a failure anyway. How is this school deteriorated like this?" But as soon as Chiron looks at them, they fall silent. When Chiron wants to ask someone about something, they leave him and walk away. We see that Chiron's mood is not good at all. Later, we see him practicing spirit range with his class, and he says to himself, "Why am I doing all this? I can do it with my little toe." He tries to practice the hardest type, which is separation, but he can't. The teacher comes and tells him something is wrong, and he says, "I don't know how to master this technique, and every time I try to do it, I feel like my soul will leave my body." She gives him some advice, and he says he'll try it. She asks him about the other 3 patterns, and he says there's no problem with them. She asks him to show his friends these patterns. Of course, Chiron doesn't want to because the situation is bad, but he has no other choice. We see that Chiron has become confused and doesn't know what to do. The teacher says to herself, "This child is the only one in the 7th grade who knows how to do the 4 forms currently, and no one is at his level. But he may be psychologically uncomfortable due to the many changes and what students have been saying about him lately." But Chiron says to himself, "Be a man, nothing will happen," and tells the teacher, "There are no problems. Let's start." When students see him going to the pictorial area, they say, "This arrogant boy came to show off in front of his girl to look strong. That's all he's good at." Amy is sitting watching him, along with almost the entire school. He starts with the defensive form, which is stronger than the last time he used it against the anti-magic. Students say to each other, "He showed 144 faces for the defensive form, so his level will surely be first class." Chiron's goal was to advance and leave the 7th grade because there was a lot of talk about him, and he was tired of it. He wanted to show them his best. Teacher Romy was saying, "I think if I promoted him in rank, it would be better." Then it was his turn to show the last of the 4 forms. He couldn't do it. He heard people mocking him, saying, "What a failure." He got angry and said, "Why am I listening to people's talk? Why do they want me to fail? I don't care about them. I'm here to achieve my dream and become the greatest magician in history." Indeed, we saw that he began to separate himself from his spirit area. Later, we see Teacher Sina sitting and reading about what happened between Chiron and the 6 who followed him, and how he easily defeated them despite the presence of an anti-magic. She said, "Student is very strong. Even the top students would lose in this situation and need an artifact to help them." She said to herself, "Be weak." But for him to defeat 6 together alone means he's very strong. Then Teacher Romy comes and tells Sina that Chiron has learned the final form after 1 month of training. Romy tells Sina, "I think it's time for him to move to the higher grade." We see Sina ending the class saying, "I have news for you. Chiron will move to the 5th grade starting tomorrow." Everyone gets angry and shouts, "No, this is impossible. We need 2 years to reach the 5th grade, and he did it in 1 month. He doesn't even know how to use magic. He's just a failure. Any one of us can defeat him." Everyone is angry and demands a meeting with the school administration to clarify what happened. Later, Sina sits thinking about what happened in her office and says, "There's definitely something wrong. No one can stand him." Then a student about Chiron's age, whom we know as Maria, enters and tells the teacher, "I need to tell you something about what happened in class earlier." Maria starts explaining to the teacher what happened recently, saying that students no longer like sitting with Chiron and leave him alone, but it developed into bullying him loudly in front of him and spreading rumors, which affects his psychology and made him get bad grades. Maria says, "I couldn't stay silent without saying something." Sina replies, "I understand everything now. To me, and I'll handle it." Later, we see Chiron in the library at night, when it's late and he's supposed to be sleeping. On his way to bed, he remembers the words of the head servant that probably no one will like him, but his dream is worth persevering for, and he must continue despite them. Chiron says, "I must continue for all the people who believed in me." Then he heads to his room and suddenly hears a knock on the door. At first, he thinks it's a student coming to bully him, but he's surprised to find Teacher Sina. The teacher enters, and they sit down to talk. Sina asks him, "Do you find studying difficult?" He replies, "Everything is fine." She says, "I've heard from many that there are problems between you and the students." He responds, "There's nothing to worry about." She tells him, "No need to lie. If you need help, tell me, Chiron." Chiron confesses, saying, "I was hoping to have friends at school like anyone else, but it seems the situation will be a bit difficult, but that's not important. I won't change myself for them. They're younger than me in the end. I think when I get promoted, the situation will be easier, especially when I deal with people my age." Later, we see Sina standing in the teachers' meeting explaining her reasons for promoting Chiron to the 5th grade. She says students are bullying him, which affects his psychology. Everyone agrees except Teacher Sad, who says, "I think this won't be good for him or us at the moment." The vice principal asks, "Why?" "Because he doesn't know how to use magic." Sina responds, "He can use magic easily, but he doesn't want to learn it now. He's focusing on something else." A verbal battle ensues between Sad and Sina as usual, so the vice principal intervenes, saying, "Be quiet, I've come up with the appropriate solution." The next day, students are surprised by an announcement saying 7th grade students have a chance for promotion through a test, but only one will pass and enter the 5th grade. The test is to learn teleportation magic and demonstrate it. Principal says, "This way, he'll get rid of the headache the students will cause. If Chiron is directly transferred to the 5th grade, they'll say it's favoritism and nepotism. So this step was necessary for everyone to try and have a chance, and he's sure Chiron is capable of this challenge and will pass the test." The topic spreads among upper grade students, and they wonder about the problem with Chiron's inability to use magic. When Amy learns about it, she gets angry and says, "How could he not tell me about something like this?" She means the test and says, "I must help him." It's true that it's difficult for 7th grade students, but it will be very difficult for a student who doesn't use magic at all. Amy decides to go to Chiron's room at night so no one sees her. She flies there wearing black clothes and fully disguised, but humorously, Teacher Sina was also also there, which embarrasses Amy. Sina asks her, "Do you come here every day?" Amy replies, "No, you misunderstand. I'm here for the first time to help Kyron, and also because if someone saw us together in the morning and he might get bullied." They sit and talk about the test. Amy asks, "Don't you think this test is a bit difficult and dangerous?" Sina responds, "I see that, but this is the principal's vision, and no one can argue with him." Amy explains that teleportation magic requires the student to know the properties of light, and since light is the fastest thing on Earth, the magic uses light properties to transcend time and space very quickly. She adds, "This magic, in short, turns the magician's body into light." They sit and explain some theories about light. Kyron says, "But I need to practice this, and it must be in an empty place." Amy suggests going to the teleportation training ground, which is high up in the mountains at an altitude of 1,000 meters. They want Kyron to teleport between two mountain peaks, and if he succeeds, he'll pass the test. But there's a small problem. Students who go to practice there might fall between the mountains and die. However, there's an advantage for those who will train in this place because it's where the test will be conducted. Sina says teachers will be there in case of problems, or if someone falls. But the idea is that if the results are close, students might fight. And of course, Kyron will be their first target. Sina says, "I see that you should have entered the 5th grade from day 1, but what happened has happened. So I'm here to fix this situation, and from tomorrow, I'll train you to pass the test." Amy asks, "Don't you think, teacher, that if someone knows there might be a problem?" She adds, "I can be Kyron's teacher, especially since there won't be many obstacles in the matter." Sina replies, "You're supposed to enter a test to join the higher category and graduate, and it will be difficult for you." But Kiran interjects, saying, "Too early to talk about this? We learn that the higher category is the most difficult and hard to pass, and whoever passes it will finally become a real magician." In the end, they ask Kyron to decide who will teach him. He honestly says, "I want to do this on my own." Both are surprised, but the teacher understands and says, "Okay, no problem. If you want to face this battle alone, we'll respect your decision." Before leaving the room, she tells him, "Anytime you feel you need help, call me. I'll help you like any student in the school." Kyron talks with Amy, who asks why he didn't tell her about what happened in his class and why he's trying to avoid her. He apologizes, saying, "Sorry, but it wasn't related to you. I didn't want to diminish myself in your eyes when you learn that people are bullying me. Especially since from the first day at school, I saw your name above everyone, so I decided to be your competitor." After Amy leaves, Kyron thinks to himself, "Students resent me now, so they'll hate everything I do. So I must train alone, anyone in the same boat with me. But I must finish training quickly, because there's only 1 month left until the exam." We see Kyron actually studying and figuring out how to apply this practically. He says, "The idea is that everyone around me is better because they use magic and have been studying since childhood, and they can easily hire private tutors, but I must catch up with them." We then see one of Kyron's bullies, named Mark, from the Slider family, who has already mastered teleportation magic. He talks to his assistant, saying, "What did that lowlife Kyron do?" Assistant replies, "He's just studying from a pile of books." Mark is surprised and says, "I expected he'd bring a private tutor with his parents' money, especially since it's clear his parents are very rich, but this is surely a trick." The assistant says, "Continue what you're doing. Keep watching him." We see that Kyron has finished all the theories he needs, and it's time for application. He actually went to the training ground and entered the spirit realm, trying to apply the theory and use teleportation. Indeed, things were going well, and time passes day by day with Kyron still training until only 9 days are left before the test. He enters the school injured and in very bad condition. We see that his attempts have failed, and every day he tries but encounters a new problem, and every problem he solves reveals another, until only 1 day remains before the test, and he still can't master this technique. He says, "I'm supposed to have solved all the problems, and there's no other problem in front of me, and I'll be able to use teleportation." Indeed, he tries, and finally, it works perfectly. But as soon as he finishes, he falls from exhaustion and says, No, I don't have time, I must continue training." But sleep overcomes him. Today we see Mark being very arrogant, saying, "Only 700 meters separate me from the 5th grade." Mark goes to the classroom and meets Maria. He scares her and says, "How does it feel to be a coward and a tattletale? You told the teachers about our bullying of Chiron. Because you're a coward, you'll stay in 7th grade your whole life." He adds, "I was nice to you because we were in the same class, but trust me, once I'm in 5th grade, I'll bully you to death, and you'll never get rid of us." Mark then meets some friends who tell him they have a plan for the race. 2 of them will distract Chiron, while the other 2 protect Mark so he can finish first. Mark says, "Don't worry. Once I reach 5th grade, I'll use my influence to get you all elite teachers and make you catch up to me quickly." Everyone goes to the mountainous area where the test will take place. Some 7th graders are watching but not participating. The 5th grade is also watching, not wanting anyone to win because they consider them kids. The 4th and 6th grades brought popcorn, thinking it's a game. All the teachers are there to judge. A signal signal shows that 10 minutes remain before the test starts. One of Mark's friends says, "I don't see Chiron at all." Mark wonders, could he have withdrawn? We see Chiron still sleeping on the ground, waking up suddenly in panic, saying, "What time is it? I'll miss the test." Even Amy and Cheryl start looking for him, but can't find him. Amy says to herself, "Could he have failed to learn it?" She adds, I told him he couldn't do it. This boy is too stubborn." Marco laughs, saying, "This fool thought he was successful and would learn by himself. Turns out he's arrogant." The test was about to begin. It was simply for the children to jump off the cliff, and whoever used teleportation to reach the farthest distance would be the winner. They were scared, but Saad tells them they might die. But like all academy tasks, if they don't like it, they can withdraw. However, everyone continues, and no one withdraws. They were about to start when they heard a voice from afar saying, "Wait for me!" Suddenly, they see Chiron running towards them. Sina wants to postpone the test so he can rest a bit, but the principal says, it's his problem for being late. We'll start as agreed. Everyone is surprised he came at all. One of Mark's gang members tells Chiron, "Come stand here," and Chiron, unfocused, says, "Okay," part 1 of their plan. The start signal appears, and everyone runs towards the cliff. Some people use their teleportation from afar, while others get closer to the edge. But the people protecting Mark are scared because only Mark is in the lead. We see Chiron literally jumping into the air without doing anything, and everyone is confused, saying, "Boy crazy? Did he come here to commit suicide?" We see Chiron remembering something he read in a book. In difficult situations where a person thinks they'll die, they can do things they normally can't. You have a few seconds to live before hitting the ground and dying, and you can save yourself in that time. This was Chiron's plan. Indeed, as soon as he jumped, everyone thought he would fall, but he activated teleportation magic and overtook them all. No one could believe what happened. We then see Maria, who was hiding in the forest. We learn she spent 6 years in 7th grade, and her grades are never the best. She complains this is because of her parents' bullying, always saying everyone maintains their level, except her. She says, "I must make Mark fall somehow because he'll destroy me if he succeeds." We then see the test continuing, with Chiron always ahead of everyone. The test is divided into 10 jumps from the cliff. Total distances each student manages to fly will be added up for the final distance. We see Mark's body starting to give out, and at the same time, he can't overcome Chiron. He decides to execute the vile plan and shouts to his men, "Start now." Suddenly, Chiron sees one of Mark's men coming in front of him, and another from his side, wanting to collide with him and make him fall. He tells Chiron, "Forgive me, but I have to do this. My future depends on you." Chiron says, "What are you doing? What are you doing, you maniac?" Indeed, this happens. Chiron is hit and falls along with the other students. He tries to control himself in the air, but his body is already exhausted from the training. Of course, the spectators see this and say it was intentional to make him fall. One of them, named Iroki, an expert in teleportation magic, says the boy who hit Chiron is very skilled, and if Chiron hadn't stopped using teleportation at the last second, he could have been dead now. The students say, "This is unfair. The exam should be canceled. Didn't the teachers see what happened?" But the teachers do nothing. And Mark sits laughing arrogantly, saying, "I'm first, I'll win, I'm the smartest, I'm the best among you peasants, no one will ever reach me." But at the last moment, Chiron comes from behind and almost catches up to him. Suddenly, a loud voice says, "Warning, warning, the impassable bridge engine system will start, level 10. As soon as Saad sees this, he rushes to the engine room, and the teacher asks the principal, "What do we do? Continue or cancel the exam?" The principal replies, "You're thinking now? Cancel the exam quickly." Saad goes quickly and sees a signal from afar to cancel the exam and says, "Oh my god, there will be many complaint letters from parents." He enters the room thinking the worker there had fallen asleep, but the door is locked and someone is sitting behind it. Saad says, "Get away from the door now, or I'll destroy you." A crying girl says, "He'll kill me anyway." No one cares. Saad says to himself, "I know this voice. It's Maria." Then tells her, "Open the door quickly. Do you know what you've done?" She replies, "It doesn't matter. I'll live a hard life anyway if Mark succeeds." Saad says, "I understand everything now. What you wanted has happened, and the exam has stopped." At this moment, we see Mark saying, "The exam has been cancelled, but it doesn't matter. I'll continue to tell them I'm first." Chiron enters behind him to win too. The principal says, "What are these crazy kids?" We see Saad still standing, talking to Maria behind the door, trying to calm her down. He tells her, "Come out, nothing will happen. Don't worry about Chiron." She says, "What's the difference? This is an unfair school, and you'll keep encouraging people like Mark at Chiron's expense." He tells her, "When you first entered this school, Maria, I was still a student and was just like you. In your first years, did you hear about a genius or outstanding student named Saad?" She replies, "No." He tells her, "I was just like you. I failed 5th grade for 5 years, and my situation was exactly like yours. I felt injustice and saw everyone as bad until a day came that changed my life. We see a flashback of a student meeting with Principal Fias. Fias says, "Why do you compare yourself to others? If you keep comparing yourself to anyone, even if they're weaker than you, you'll be the loser. You should move forward without worrying about others, and then you'll become a great wizard." Meanwhile, Mark and Sharon enter the maze that appeared due to Maria's problem in the system. Mark rushes in recklessly, almost getting killed, but Sharon saves him at the last moment. The students can't believe Sharon saved Mark instead of going for the win. Sharon tries to get himself and Mark out of the maze, but it's difficult with traps everywhere. He tries to find a way out, impressing everyone with his moves. The 7th grade students who thought he got in through connections now realize he knows how to use his magic. We see that Sad is still encouraging Maria, saying, "No matter when you reach the finish line, no one cares. The important thing is not to give up halfway. How about you continue your journey, and I'll help you become a great wizard?" Behind the door, the principal tells everyone that the exam will continue, saying, "Keep going no matter what happens. It'll be my responsibility." We see Sharon facing problems against the terrible traps and says, "These traps are like they're alive, but I can't predict their movements." But because of the spirit zone, he thinks he can do something similar. He just needs to focus. He starts concentrating despite the difficult situation until he sees a suitable escape route, which is to enter the trap itself. He actually goes inside the trap and moves left and right to avoid a large part of it. No one could believe this craziness. Even Mark almost fainted from fear. Fias says this boy is extraordinary. When everyone reaches this stage, they've usually reached their limits and want to stop, often dying. But this boy is different from all the children he's seen before. When he came close to death, his body's strength increased abnormally, becoming very strong to reach the end. Teacher Romy says he knows how to bring his spirit zone density to 99.99%. We see Sharon still holding Mark, moving between traps one after another. The traps become harder, spaces between them become very narrow, making it impossible for Sharon to pass. He says, "I need to somehow shrink my field while moving," and he succeeds in doing so, passing between the traps. The audience shouts that he used rainbow teleportation. Strangely, Sharon doesn't move in a straight line but moves right and left, which is against the nature of light. People are confused, so Urko explains how Sharon did it, giving them some physics explanations that we don't need to worry about because the story's physics is different from what we study in schools. In short, Sharon did something amazing. Everyone cheers for Sharon as he finally exits the maze, but he finds a second maze in front of him, known as the Dragon Maze because it's shaped like a dragon. Mark, who was unconscious this whole time, wakes up and sees the dragon, screaming, "Dragon! Dragon!" Sina says, "I'm tired of this. It can't continue. We must stop it." She goes to the control room. Sad had managed to get Maria out of there, but he thought the exam was stopped, so he didn't turn off the machine yet. Sina comes and tells him, "What are you doing? The machine. There are still 2 who haven't left the exam." But before he goes to stop it, Romy comes and says, "Sharon succeeded." We see a flashback to the moment Romy left the place. There was 1 second left, and the dragon was about to devour Sharon. Everyone had started crying because they thought he was dead and had no chance. But he says, "There's still time, dead yet." He starts considering all possible options until he finds the best chance to survive, and he succeeds in getting out of the place with Mark, finally reaching safety. None of the spectators could believe what happened, and as soon as Teacher Romy saw it, she immediately went to tell them what happened. No one could believe what occurred, so Sad and everyone who was far away came to see what happened. After the test ended, they didn't know who passed, Sharon or Mark, but all the children celebrated Sharon, of course, before the results were announced. The principal was amazed by what happened and said happily, "Thank you, Sharon, for showing me the light of the Miri family again." We discovered that someone from the Miri family in the past did something similar to what Sharon did, harnessing and controlling light power, winning many awards, but greed blinded him. The principal said, "I hope this doesn't happen again." Finally, the winner was announced, and as expected, it was Sharon, who moved to the 5th grade. Everyone was happy for him. Marco came and apologized to Sharon, saying, "You really deserve to be in a better place than 7th grade. I'm sorry for everything I did to you. We saw a trial at school for the students who caused these problems." Mark said, "I'm sorry. I did all this. It was all because of me. Maria was trying to stop me." But Fias decided to suspend Mark and Maria for 2 months, and the other students who helped Mark for 1 month. We then saw Sharon, who went to sleep from exhaustion, but he had a very bad dream that he remembered even after waking up. As soon as he woke up, he quickly dressed to go to his classes for the day, but Emmy gave him a notebook with some magical formulas. He wanted to return it to her and give her a gift in return. When he opened the notebook for the last time before leaving it, he saw something strange that caught his attention, but we don't know what he saw. After that, we saw him go to Emmy with a basket of apples. It turned out that what he saw was a drawing of an apple, so he remembered that she likes apples or something like that. He said to her, "I brought you you apples that you like, but she said, but I like cherries. He got confused and said, then what's in this notebook? Emmy looked embarrassed, took the basket, and left. After that, we saw that she passed the high-grade test and moved to the upper grades. And of course, she no longer had time. The next day, we saw Sharon talking to Cheryl, who tells him that Emmy wants to become a military wizard and go to wars. Sharon said, but if a war happens, she'll be in danger. Cheryl replied, we're in a peaceful life now. If a war happens, we'll all participate, not just her. Cheryl said, I want to go to the upper grades with Emmy too, to be by her side as always. We saw that Sharon started to meet people from the 5th grade, Neil, who had average grades but excelled in electricity magic. Sharon said that everyone here has something they're good at, like Neil with electricity magic. He smiled with his new classmates. Hiroki came and talked to Sharon, saying, congratulations, man. You're in the 5th grade now, but be careful not to be as eccentric as them. They talked a bit. Hiroki's behavior was very strange. He almost set the whole place on fire. We saw that everyone is afraid of him because he's eccentric and completely crazy. Even teachers try to kick him out, but it's no use. We learned that he suffers from savant syndrome, which is a condition where someone has brain damage but gains amazing calculation abilities. So if we look at Hiroki's grades, we'll find that he got full marks in all scientific subjects like physics, chemistry, and math, but he got 0 in history and literature. We call him the king of physical equations because of his speed in solving them. We see an example where there was a literature exam, and the poem was about falling tree leaves. Hiroki wrote a complete equation explaining why leaves fall, which bored the teacher and got him kicked out of the class. And we see that there are research groups trying to recruit Sharon because of his skills, but he refuses, saying he doesn't have enough knowledge yet. However, he knows that Ned has a research group with an open spot, so he wants to join it. Indeed, Ned agrees, and Sharon joins his group. They go to Ned's lab known as the Magic Storage Room, which is used for research, training, and almost everything. Sharon enters this place expecting to see a traditional lab, but the lab is very strange, interested in spirits, rulers, alien creatures, and other weird things. They enter the lab, and we discover that Hiroki is also part of this research group because he believes in these things. He came to prove they're not real. Hiroki is skeptical, and at the same time, he's working on a theory that an atom can split in half, and then great energy will be released that can be used in magic, but this power could harm people. Sharon objects to his view, and they have a verbal argument. Sharon leaves the place angrily. Later, Ned sits with Hiroki to discuss what happened. Hiroki says he did it on purpose and sees Sharon as a rival, not a friend, because he's very strong and can achieve something great. He says, when I saw him face the dragon, he was able to divide time in his mind into 100,000 parts to reach this result. Of course, Ned doesn't believe him. Hiroki says, this is the power of true insight. But Ned, if you were in Sharon's place, could you have done that? Hiroki wonders, which is stronger, the power of insight, power of scientific calculation. We learn that in 2 weeks, there will be a speed test, which tests a wizard's speed in using magic. But Sharon doesn't know how he'll take this test when he still can't use magic well. He goes to teacher Sina and tells her about this. They talk a bit about it, and the teacher gives Sharon some advice. We then see Sharon in a class with a new teacher he sees for the first time, Ela. Strangely, she's both a teacher and a bishop, meaning she's a nun. A bishop is supposed to protect artifacts, which are supposed to be 12 in number. We learn that there are 12 bishops like her, each with a mission. Because of her mental strength, it's called Yunan, a title given to someone with tremendous spiritual power. In today's lesson, she'll teach them how to enhance their power. Brought some graduates with her. The first one is named Sanyul, who has a special type of magic called Kotodama. This type of magic is related to today's lesson and uses the power of words to strengthen his magic. He uses wind magic, which is very similar to the magic Sharon used in the past when he first faced the dragon and created a tornado due to his tremendous power. We see that he started saying something like a spell that took more than 3 minutes to say, and then he created the tornado with great power. Speech magic. But of course, in battle, tell the enemy, please wait 3 minutes while I say my spell. So there's a faster way to say this spell to the point where the speech becomes incomprehensible. Indeed, he said the spell in about 3 seconds, and the tornado came out with the same power. Sharon thinks to himself, this person just graduated, and when you graduate, 10th level, and this is your power. I can't imagine the power of the higher level professors. The students are afraid to use this magic and think it's difficult, but the teacher tells them, don't worry, we'll use another magic called sequencing, which is similar to speech magic, but instead of letters, it uses a sequence of numbers. The teacher activates her spirit zone. The teacher tells the students, watch me. We see that she started counting quickly up to 100, and the zone expanded. Repeated this several times until the zone increased fourfold. The teacher says this system is very powerful and makes you lethal. The problem is that you need tremendous mental strength to count all these numbers without getting distracted. After that, Sharon starts practicing this idea. He tells himself be a solution and starts forming some ideas in his mind that make him count up to 10-10 in a few seconds. He starts using light magic, and indeed he manages to release a very powerful beam of light, which looks beautiful and enhanced because of the sequencing magic. Everyone is in disbelief, even the teacher, because Sharon is stronger in defensive magic. So what makes him use magic that's considered offensive and fast? They thought it would be difficult for him. Afterwards, Sharon and the teacher go to the training ground again. The teacher starts creating magical targets that appear quickly, and the goal is for Sharon to hit them. Sharon begins to enhance his power with sequencing magic, and the test begins. He shoots beams of light and hits one target after another. The shots are very fast, almost at the speed of light because they're literally light. All the students are amazed by what Sharon did. As soon as the test time is over, Sharon has hit 342 targets, which is a very large number. Imagine hitting 342 targets in 1 minute. Aki stands up and tells his friend that Sharon is strong, but Hiroki replies, "No, he's weak, but he's interesting." Hiroki goes up to the platform and tells the teacher, "I want to do like him." She says, "Okay, but don't cause problems." Sharon thinks to himself, "Oh my god, did he come to show off his strength in front of me and break my record? I'm tired of this." Hiroki goes up and starts using his magic, but it's a completely different type from light magic. Hiroki releases something like a shot, but controls it quickly. This shot goes where he's looking, but he managed to make it smaller to be faster. He uses sequencing magic to enhance it, making its speed tremendous. Hiroki relies on predicting where targets will appear to hit them quickly. Sharon didn't expect this and asks Ned, does he know how to use sequencing magic with how many numbers per second? 100 or 1000 maybe? Ned replies, he uses 1,000,000 numbers per second, no more. We see that in 1 minute, Hiroki hits 548 targets. Everyone applauds Hiroki, who asks Sharon, what do you think of my magic? Beautiful, isn't it? Sharon angrily replies, yes. Then Hiroki says to Sharon, do you want me to tell you how to count to 1,000,000 this fast? Sharon replies, if you don't mind. Hiroki says, I'll tell you anyway, but you won't be able to do it. I use logarithms. Sharon thinks to himself, this is crazy, and grows tired of Hiroki's strange talk. Hiroki says, do you think you can still defeat me? Sharon replies, it's just a test. I don't want to defeat you. Hiroki responds, everyone says that, but you're burning inside now. Sharon's anger grows and he says, fine. Your visual power is great and all, to me is like that of a worm. We see Hiroki telling Sharon, you and your calculations are like a worm to me. I can easily crush it with my foot. Everyone watches excitedly, eager to see the upcoming battle. But at this moment, the announcement for the speed gun test begins. The test is simple. Each student has 1 minute, during which targets will appear. The number of targets the student hits in the minute will be their final score. Of course, the more targets hit, the better the result. The exam is divided into stages, and the contestant moves from one stage to another after completing all targets in their current stage. For example, the first stage contains only 10 targets, the second 11, the third 12, the fourth 13, the fifth 14, and so on. As the level increases, the speed of moving targets increases to become faster than before, making the test more difficult. The average score in this test for the 5th category is about 400 successfully hit targets. But so far, no one has managed to exceed 700 targets. Of course, some have exceeded 400, but no one has broken the 700 barrier. Chiron wonders if he can do it, smiling as he thinks about the information. He tells himself, to hit 700 targets, I need to hit them all in 1 minute without any mistakes and pass 30 levels with their changes. To succeed, I need to complete each of the 30 levels in just 5 seconds. Chiron starts practicing this test in front of people and manages to hit 567 targets in 25 rounds within 1 minute. Everyone is amazed by his incredible speed, especially since he doesn't even need to move his head to hit these targets. Chiron knows he can fire 4 shots in 1 second. At this moment, Haruki enters and says, your score is good, but I don't think it will be better than mine. Haruki takes the test and gets 568 targets, just 1 more than Chiron. Everyone can't believe what he did, but they say it doesn't matter because Chiron has been training for a short time and improves every day, while Haruki is just arrogant. The next day, Chiron tries again and gets 571 targets, but Haruki gets 572, as if he deliberately wants to beat Chiron by just 1 target to annoy him. On the 3rd day, Chiron gets 585 and Haruki gets 586. On the 4th day, Chiron gets 593 and Haruki gets 594. Chiron becomes very angry and tired of this situation. He starts thinking about what Haruki means until he realizes Haruki's idea. No matter how hard Chiron tries, he will always be weaker than Haruki, even if only by 1 point. Students begin to wonder every day whether Haruki will beat Chiron as usual, or if it will be different this time. They tell each other that although Chiron is strong and unique, he will always be weaker than Haruki. Haruki smiles more now that he's become one of the strongest people, and everyone wants to team up with him. We see Chiron eating, but even while eating, he's thinking about how to improve his performance. Ned comes to him and says, "You'll wear yourself out this way. You should be a good sport even if you lose." Chiron gets angry and says, "Did you come to shut me up?" Ned replies, "No, my friend. But the competition between you two is fun, and you're both my friends. I honestly hope you both win." Next, we see Amy and Cheryl. Amy looks very tired and exhausted, and she's become much thinner than before. Cheryl asks her, "Are you okay? Tell me what's happening to you." Amy replies, "Don't worry, it's all because of the graduation year. You'll be in the same situation soon, and then you'll understand why I've become like this." Amy gives Cheryl some things she had asked for earlier. Then, Cheryl sits down to talk with Amy and asks, "Is the progress test that difficult?" Amy answers, "Too difficult. But the idea is that I need to get a high score because even if I get an average or high score, she's not sure about being accepted." But Amy reassures Cheryl saying, "Don't worry, I think with your current strength, you'll be able to finish this exam very easily." Then Amy asks about Chiron's news, and Cheryl tells her about the funny situation between Chiron and Haruki. Amy says, "Strange, Haruki used to do that to me too when I was in 5th grade. It's clear that this Haruki doesn't leave anyone alone." We then return to Chiron, who finally succeeds, after great effort, in hitting 700 targets in 1 minute. He's completely exhausted, his face red and sweating as if he were in a battle. No one believes what happened, and they say that on the day someone reaches this record, they'll be from the 5th grade. At this moment, Haruki comes and says, "Well done, but honestly, I find this number very small." Then he enters and achieves 701 targets. No one can believe this madness and the terrifying competition between Chiron and Haruki. Chiron says to himself, is this his limit? He still seems very comfortable. Is he doing this on purpose? Maybe this isn't his limit yet. I'm sure if I continue this challenge with him, I'll be the loser in the end. Chiron returns to his room, sad and upset about what's happening. He says to himself, after this break ends, it'll be time for the real test. This means I only have 3 days left. If I don't find a way to surpass Haruki during this time, he'll be the strongest and win this battle. I can't allow something like this to happen. He tells himself desperately. It's clear that I should focus on the final test and get a very high score in it. It's not necessary to be the first. But he remembers Haruki's words when he said that only the weak withdraw, and if you withdraw once or accept defeat, you'll remain weak and worthless all your life, and anyone will be able to easily overcome you. Chiron starts remembering events from his life and says, I must be stronger. No one in this world listens to the words of the weak. Become stronger and stronger because everyone only listens to the words of the strong, while no one cares about the existence of the weak at all. Chiron says, I have no solution but to win, and to surpass Haruki, I must also surpass the numbers. Chiron sits down to practice and thinks deeply, saying to himself, what are numbers? What is the sequence of numbers? What is the essence of numbers? But no, I shouldn't think like this. If I continue to think this way about everything big and small, I'll never be able to surpass Haruki. I shouldn't think, I should feel. Chiron wonders in his thoughts. What's the farthest number I can reach? Suddenly he finds himself in front of a barrier and says, how did I get here? Impossible. Numbers have no limit. Numbers are infinite. Chiron tries to break this barrier, but as soon as he breaks it, he finds himself fallen into a black area. He comes out of this state to discover that a long time has passed, so much so that the candle he lit at the beginning of the ritual has burned out. It turns out that the time that has passed since Chiron closed his eyes is 40 hours. The next day, it's the main test day. Everyone is in the test area, even those from younger or older classes who aren't required to take the test. They've come to watch the expected decisive battle between Chiron and Haruki, wanting to see who will get the highest score in the end. We see students entering the test one by one and finishing quickly. The last two are Chiron and Haruki. Everyone is excited, and each watching student is betting on one of them to get the highest number per minute. The two smile, and from the first second, Chiron and Haruki enter a terrifying state of focus. They see nothing in front of them except the targets. Seconds pass, and everyone is waiting, not knowing who will win because both are extremely strong. But after a few seconds, Chiron takes the lead, scoring 121 targets, while Haruki scores 119. No one expected this, and they say he's doing it to win by 1 target in the end and annoy Chiron. But Haruki laughs, saying, guys, this time I'm serious and not mocking Chiron. I'm actually doing my best. Haruki gets very angry and says to himself, what did that worthless Chiron do in the last 3 days? How did he train? And what made him so much stronger? The teacher sees what's happening and is happy that Chiron is trying to surpass his limits. We return to Haruki, who gets very angry because he doesn't want to lose and says, if you think you'll defeat me, Chiron, you're wrong. The teacher says to herself, I think I know the method he's using to count the numbers. Problem with this method is that he must be terrifyingly aware, and if he misses any number in the middle, that will be the end. and he'll destroy everything he's done in this time. Chiron says to himself, I must never lose focus, not even for a moment. If I lose for just 1 second, I'll have lost the whole battle. Chiron starts to widen the gap between him and Iruki in a frightening way, and everyone starts cheering for Chiron. Even those who are still cheering for Iruki tell him, what are you doing? You're going to lose. Hurry up. At this moment, Iruki thinks about it and says to himself, you're crazy like me, Chiron. But I won't withdraw, and I won't lose this challenge against you, because I'm the strongest here. Iruki focuses in a terrifying way and moves to a second stage of concentration, reaching another level. His state begins to change, and Iruki's score starts to surpass Chiron's. Only 25 seconds remain. No one knows how Iruki is doing it, but when they focus, they discover that Iruki has managed to fire 2 shots hitting the targets, instead of 1 as he was doing at the beginning. This shot is his spiritual range, and no one believes what's happening. Even the teacher says, how? How can this happen? Is it logical for someone to have 2 spiritual ranges? She says to herself, this spiritual division is a feature of the professional model. I can't believe that a student of ours has the ability to use it, especially at this time. And in addition, he's using 2 sequential equations at the same time, as well as logarithms. How does this boy's mind work? At this moment, Cheryl says to herself, Amy was right, Iruki is really crazy when it comes to competition. Only 15 seconds remain, and the difference in score between them is about 200 points in Iruki's favor. Everyone says the result has been decided in his favor. At this moment, we see Chiron in his mind, frustrated and sad, saying, I did everything I could and tried my best, but in the end, I couldn't surpass Iruki. It's useless. I've lost. But at the last moment, he gets excited again and says, I will never lose. I'm not weak. Be stronger. I must be the strongest person in the world. He returns once again to the barrier he was standing at and couldn't break the previous time, which when he broke it, he went to a black area. He says, I will surpass the limits of numbers that I was afraid of something happening to me because of them last time. But this time, I'm not afraid of anything happening to me because I have nothing to lose. I must be stronger. At this moment, Chiron breaks the barrier and finds a bright white light behind it. We return to reality, and Chiron can expand his spiritual range. And not only that, but he can also attack faster. Score increases more and more. He's easily approaching Iruki's score, but Iruki tells him, no matter what happens, I won't lose. Of course, the audience at this moment can't believe what's happening and is amazed by the intense battle between them. Finally, the last 5 seconds of the battle pass, and these 5 seconds seem like 5 hours to us because they're focused in a terrifying way. In the end, the fight ends, and we discover that Iruki ultimately scored 1,247 points, but Chiron scored 1,253 points, setting a new record. No one believes what happened, and everyone starts congratulating Chiron. At this moment, Iruki comes and says, you're a cheater. You used wide-range magic, and that's forbidden in the test we were just in. Chiron is shocked and says, did I really do that? But then Iruki laughs and tells him, I'm joking with you, my friend. This is photon magic. It doesn't apply to that. He says, congratulations, my friend. You won. No one can believe what's happening, and they say the world is ending. He admits he lost so easily. Then they sit talking to each other and open topics that are pointless because they're overly philosophical. In the end, he says to Chiron, I want to ask you something. I want you to be my teacher. Then they return to discussing the philosophical debate between them. They were talking about whether explosions can be destructive and devastating or not, and each has a point of view. Chiron says that if an explosion is powerful but used for good, and the one who caused it won't be evil. But Oki believes that anyone who causes explosions is a bad person, and a day will come when they use their terrifying explosion abilities against humans and destroy a large part of them. Then we see Oki afraid, and Chiron says to himself, I understand. Oki is afraid of being the cause of the destruction and death of many people because of his destructive power. Chiron says, you're the only one who could defeat me. And by that, you prove that your point of view is the truth and right. And this means you're also the only one who can control me if I get out of control. Chiron thinks to himself, I don't know what to say now, but I'm sure Oki is really scared. The fear is clear in his eyes. It's real fear, not an act at all. Then Chiron holds Oki's hand and says, don't worry. When your power gets out of control and you're close to killing someone, I'll be the first to stop you, even if it means my own death. But at that moment, Teacher Ayla tells Chiron, come here for a moment. She takes him to a dark room, angry, and says, were you planning to leave? Chiron replies, I don't understand. Ayla says, the place you entered is called the domain. If you go there again, you'll never be the same. Chiron tells her, I didn't know it was this dangerous. I'm sorry, I won't go there again. Ayla says, the domain you entered is beyond numbers. It's called the infinite domain, or as magicians call it, the immortal function. But monks call this place serenity. Humans can reach infinity, but those who get there always become nothing. Chiron thinks about it and says, I saw a black place there, nothing but darkness. But over time, darkness absorbed me, and I became part of it. He thinks this is what Teacher Ayla meant. Then we see Charon sleeping, dreaming of this place as if he's being pulled back in. It's a nightmare Charon wakes up from, saying, "Since I entered this place, I've been having this nightmare almost every day." From time to time, Charon feels a very strange sensation in his body that he can't resist. He goes to the teacher for a checkup, but she finds nothing strange in his body. Charon remains confused, not knowing exactly what's happening to him. Charon goes to the place where he sits with Hiroki and End and tells them, "Lately, I feel like something wrong is happening to me, as if a ghost is chasing me." Then he describes in detail what happened to him and says, "At the end of the darkness, I saw a strange glowing golden circle." Hiroki asks him, "Was it moving fast?" Charon replies, "Yes." Hiroki says, "This is probably a number no one in our continent could predict." Hiroki continues, "If we assume this place is real and not just an illusion in your mind, I can say that what happens in this place is similar to what happens in outer space." Charon seems disbelieving and says, "How can I dream about it when I've never been there?" Ned responds, "This might be true. I know a prisoner who was sentenced to death, and they did strange experiments on him. They put his body in something like an iron coffin and used electricity in a certain way without killing him. The experiment was stopped soon after because it was unethical, but the man remained in a coma for a whole week. During this time, he said he went to different cities and continents and learned things there. Indeed, after research, it turned out that these things happened at that time, and news of them hadn't reached our continent yet." Ned smiles and adds, "After that, the man felt a strange sensation like there was a tingling in his body, the feeling you're describing to us." Hiroki says, "This is the closest thing to what happened in your body, and it actually happened to you. When you broke through this barrier, your soul went to outer space this time, to a different continent like what happened with this man. Didn't you say you saw stars? I think you broke through some barrier, Charon." Hiroki explains, "In the world that isn't absorbed, the very small world, many things can happen that make these small things break through the barrier of space-time and place too, like light particles, electrons, and others. On the day of the photon test, a very strange light was coming out of you, and I think this was the moment you broke the barrier, wasn't it? And since then, you've been seeing nightmares every day." Charon answers, "Yes, that's right." Hiroki says, "Okay, tell us what happened. Tell us how you felt then." Charon says there's something the teacher told him, that he went to the immortal function. When Hiroki and Ned hear this, they can't believe it. Hiroki says, "I heard this from my father before, but I didn't pay much attention to it and thought it was just nonsense. My father used to say it solves any mathematical problem, but it's clear now that it's real and you managed to use it, my friend." Charon says, "But the teacher said it's dangerous." Hiroki replies, "That's true." Then Charon says, "All right, guys, I've decided. I've decided to form a group to study the science of supernatural spirits to know exactly what's happening." Ned and Hiroki are very happy and decide to join him. They say, "We want to add other people to our group to become a respected and trusted group in this school, and also have privileges." Then they go to the cafeteria to recruit other people to join them. After that, we see the teacher named Sad carrying many papers. We learn that every year there are research groups in the academy, which are like student clubs such as the science club and reading club. All students want to join a club or specific group, so those who want to join submit a paper, which is then approved or rejected. While Sad is carrying the papers, he drops a paper containing a request from Ned, Hiroki, and Chiron to join a group called Supernatural Psychological Research Group. Teacher Olivia is next to Sad, reads it, and says, "Isn't this group a bit notorious? Why do they want to join it?" She starts thinking about this, especially since Chiron is one of her favorite students. Olivia begins to investigate the matter and goes to talk to teacher Romy. At first, Romy is very happy that Chiron joined a research group, but Olivia tells her about this specific group. Olivia starts warning Romy about this group and that strange things happen in it every year. But Romy says, "Surely this group isn't that bad, and surely Chiron wants to join it for a reason. It's not by chance." Romy starts thinking about this and says, "Isn't the student called Mikia Jarol the current president of the magic society called Torima? And wasn't he supposed to be the former president of the group you're worried about?" Olivia replies, "Yes, that's right." Romy then says, "You see, a good student can excel and become brilliant even if they're in such a group. Our role is just to guide them, nothing more, and to keep them away from bad things they might do that could harm them." After that, we move to where Shagam is sitting with his friends, classes today. But Shagam is tired and surprised by this, and says to them, "You don't study, you don't submit assignments, you don't attend classes, you don't do anything. What are you doing with your lives?" Orky replies, "We want to play chess." Anyway, Chiron sits down to study, but they bother him and make him unable to concentrate. We return once again to teacher Romy and Olivia, upset about what's happening, and says that ever since Chiron met Hiroki, she hasn't been comfortable at all. She adds that if her suspicions are correct, when these students graduate, they will be like a ticking time bomb and will be the focus of the whole world's attention because of their immense power, as there are no other students who match their power at present. Then we return to Chiron and his friends who realized he's really busy studying. They start showing him some things, especially Iroki, who shows him some inventions he made, like magic bombs he created using magic engineering, a cloak that makes the wearer invisible, and many other things. But among these things, there's a book that piques Chiron's curiosity. This book contains information about most students in the school, including a group of unidentified students. Chiron finds his name in the middle of the book and smiles, while Eric and Nate celebrate this, saying, "Yes, you're with us now." Then we return to teacher Olivia and Emmy, who are still talking about this subject. Olivia says she wants to shut down the group Chiron wants to join forever, because it's completely inappropriate, but Emmy tries to calm her down, to no avail. Olivia is very worried about the students in this group. Emmy still holds her opinion and says, "Okay, we'll watch them from afar, and if something happens, we'll intervene. But the idea is that they should have the freedom to choose, so that when they grow up, they don't become cowards and know how to rely on themselves. If we choose everything for them, at the first disaster, they'll fall and won't know what to do because they're used to someone else making decisions for them." Then Emmy adds, "Olivia, I want to tell you something. Do you remember in the target hitting exam when Chiron suddenly managed to outperform Rocky even though he was about to lose?" Olivia replies, "Yes, I remember." Emmy continues, "The reason he was able to do that is that he reached the infinite zone that exists beyond numbers." And of course, as soon as Olivia hears this, she reacts, gets very upset, and becomes even more worried about Chiron. Later, we see Olivia heading to the place where Chiron and his friends gather. It's a secret underground hideout, but not entirely secret as teachers know its location and can enter any time. When Olivia arrives, the students sense her coming and hide the bombs and strange objects they had. Olivia feels they're pretending everything is fine, but she realizes it's not. Olivia says to herself, "We really need to end this group and prevent them from meeting again." She's certain something is happening here and tells them, "Look, I've come for an important matter. Of course, you know your group is weak compared to others and doesn't have many members. School has decided to close this group." Olivia explains that there was a group with a very bad reputation, with only Nito and Aki, who were said to conduct strange experiments. But this group wasn't created by them. It existed in the school before, and was passed down from generation to generation. After Chiron became friends with Erok and Ned, he decided to join them, but needed to send a request to the school. Olivia says she sees this group as not good, and may hinder Chiron's progress, potentially causing problems, especially with someone powerful like Aki. She adds that she wants to keep the match away from the gasoline. Nothing more. Olivia continues, saying she'll dissolve this group because there's no money to support it and not many members, so no one cares. Begs her to leave it and reconsider, saying, "I live for this group." Olivia pretends to think for a moment, then says, "I can agree on one condition only. Chiron leaves this group and never enters it again. What do you think?" They discuss a bit, and the teacher explains why she wants to do this. She says she's doing it because she wants to control Chiron, especially after the stages of the zone that comes after numbers. The problem is that if he remains curious as he is, with Ned and Iroki's help, they might lose Chiron forever. Olivia continues, saying, "We haven't yet reached the biggest problem, which is the transgression disease." Aki responds, "Problem with that. My father told me I got this disease when I was young, but because of it, I became a genius. True, I'm a bit of a crazy genius, still alive as you can see." Olivia responds, "This silly way of thinking is why I'm afraid to leave Chiron with you or even keep him in this group." Then Olivia begins to explain what the transgression disease is, saying, "This disease simply affects the human mind at a certain time when it becomes unable to handle the talent and power it has gained." Olivia adds that this disease can be compared to a dam that holds back water, but if the water exceeds the limit, the dam will burst and everything in its path will die. Over time, this disease causes the mind to break down, and the person becomes insane or dies, whichever comes first. Olivia continues to frighten Chiron about this matter, so they don't repeat it again. Chiron thinks to himself, "Indeed, I might go crazy if I continue to see strange dreams like this. Things get worse. It's only a matter of time before I start going insane, and then it will be my end." Olivia says, "Chiron is currently under the least mental pressure due to studies because we're nearing the end of the year, and he's in this state. And here you see him talking about dreams and nightmares. If you really love him, let him leave this group, and I'll have him undergo intensive psychological treatment. With time, he'll return as he was and better, so we can catch up with him before a problem occurs that we can't solve." But they still don't want to let Chiron go. So one of them says, "Isn't the subject we're talking about ultimately Chiron's personal life? Why don't you let him decide whether he'll stay with us, and we'll research this topic on our own? Or go with you, teacher, and undergo psychological treatment?" Olivia replies, "It's an idea, but this disease when it affects Chiron will be different because of his different strength and because he's a bit powerful." But Yoriko tells her, "In the end, this is his life. He's the one who will decide and we have nothing to do with it, not even you, but we'll stay with him until the end." Chiron starts thinking and says, I personally feel crazy sometimes, but I'll never go with you. I feel that after these nightmares and the bad phase I'm going through now are over, I'll be very close to discovering the secret inside my body, and then I'll be able to know my true identity. I've been running away every time, but I've learned that running away and giving up are not solutions to anything. I have to complete this matter to the end and know my true power and who I am. Olivia remembers someone from her past and starts to relax, saying, okay, I agree with this, but my offer not to close your team in exchange for leaving Chiron is no longer valid. Now you have to prove your importance. The next day, we see them sitting in the academy, thinking about how to prove their importance. They say, if that's the case, prove that spirits are real, but it will be a bit difficult. Meanwhile, we see teacher Olivia heading somewhere. Appearance looks different. Ned and Eric are suspicious of her and decide to follow her to find out if she's doing something wrong, to use against her in exchange for leaving their group alone. This is Neil's idea, but Aki warns him about the danger of following a powerful witch like Olivia, saying she'll sense them, but he suggests using his invisibility cloak so they can get close to her without her noticing. They decide to go after her, leaving Chiron alone. They follow her until they reach a working-class area, surprised to see her in such a place despite her wealth. Olivia is very cautious of anyone who might be following her, making them suspect she might be selling illegal items or something of that sort. She continues walking until she reaches a certain house. Someone opens for her, and she enters. Of course, they can't enter after her, so they decide to look for another way. They find a basement to the house, break its lock, and enter. They sneak around until they find a closed room where they hear Olivia's voice. They think she's in a relationship with someone, so they break down the door and enter, only to discover that she was being painted by an artist. Olivia gets angry and says to them, "What are you doing? It's completely wrong. How can you follow someone without their permission?" But the artist calms her down. She tells him, "But breaking into people's homes like this is also wrong." He replies, "My lady, I forgive them. Calm down a bit, I'll go make some tea for you all." When we look at the artist, discover that he resembles the little boy that Olivia remembered when Sheehan was talking about giving up. But this man is also blind. When he approaches Chiron as he's leaving the room, he feels something strange in his head. The three can't believe what's happening, and they can't believe that a blind person can paint at all. We learn that this person's name is Armin. Olivia says to the students, "You should thank Armin for being forgiving. Someone else might have literally turned you into potatoes." Rocky asks, "Teacher, if he's a painter, why were you walking so fearfully, and why are you using people?" She answers, "He was one of your academy's graduates, but I was a bit younger then." He asks, "How can he be a graduate from our academy if he's blind?" She says, "Actually, he wasn't born blind, but what happened to him was because of me." She begins to tell the story saying, "When I was young, I was suffering from the transgression disease that might affect Chiron someday. Crying and didn't know what to do. Suddenly I started running like a mad woman. I was literally mad, running. But Armin kept running after me saying, 'Don't run to this area, it's very dangerous.' It was a rainy day, and I was running towards something like a sea or a river. The water level was high, and I didn't care about what he said. Suddenly, I found myself falling into this sea. Armin ran after me and jumped to save me. We managed to grab a wooden board so we wouldn't drown. At that moment, a broken tree with sharp edges due to the break appeared in front of me. I had to go underwater to stay alive and not get hit by it. Armin went underwater but stayed up to be able to hold onto the board. In turn, he was hit by the sharp wood. This was how he lost his sight." Olivia continues, saying, "He was one of the best students in the academy and dreamed of becoming a great wizard. But unfortunately, all this was in exchange for protecting me and keeping me alive. Even though I would have been at fault if anything happened to me, and no one would have blamed him. But he was brave." At this moment, Chiron starts to feel scared inside about the idea of the disease that might affect him, and that he won't just harm himself, but might harm those around him as well, just as happened in Olivia and Armin's story. Armin enters and says, "As usual, Olivia is talking about unnecessary things, isn't she? Tea instead of this useless talk." They take the tea from him and ask if they can watch him paint. Armin agrees and starts to continue the painting he was doing of Olivia. Everyone can't believe what's happening, or how he paints with such skill. Hiroki says, "I think he's using the spirit realm in painting, to have a conception of the picture he's painting. He surely can't paint like this while blind." But Chiron has another theory. Asks Armin, "Can you really see with your eye?" Armin laughs and says to Chiron, "I was waiting for you to ask this question." Armin removes the bandage that was on his eye, and we see a very strange scene where his eye literally lights up and a very bright white light comes out of it. At this moment, Chiron is amazed and tells Ned and Arax to look at Armin's eye, and he hits their heads, but they don't feel anything. Suddenly, time stops. Even teacher Olivia doesn't move, and nothing moves at all. No one is conscious except two, Chiron and Armin. Chiron doesn't understand what's happening and asks, "What exactly are you doing?" I don't understand anything. Armin replies, don't worry, this is a type of magic called stopping magic. Chiron says to himself, this is impossible. I never imagined I would know magic capable of using this time magic and reaching the speed of light in its use. Armin says to Chiron, sit down, let's talk a little. We have much more time than anyone. Armin explains, look, usually when people see, light goes from any source and falls on the eye, then the eye sends signals to the brain, and the brain translates them and makes you see. But it's a bit strange with me because my eye is the light itself, unlike usual. All this happened because of the immortal function, which is the infinite world that comes after numbers. When Chiron hears this, he gets very nervous and asks Armin, can I ask you how you did this and where? Armin begins to tell Chiron saying, the people who were able to live and adapt to the infinite world are called the conquerors. Don't worry, Chiron, you won't lose your mind and you won't go crazy as people have probably told you. It might be a little different with you, but you'll get used to it. Chiron responds, honestly, I see the entire universe in my dreams every day, but I hide this from my friends so they don't worry about me more than they already do. And I don't just see, I also feel strange things. And this is what makes me doubt that I might lose my mind. Armin laughs and says, don't worry, you're just loved by magic and what you feel are unavoidable symptoms, but they're harmless. And in your dreams, you really do see the universe. Armin continues, be a bit nervous because of this new power. But in reality, ordinary people don't fear when they reach this stage. You're not afraid of universe dreams or new powers. You're afraid of something else entirely that you don't know yet. But as soon as you know it, you'll feel comfortable and forget this feeling of fear. Chiron asks, when will I know this thing that scares me? Armin replies, you'll know it when the time comes. This time might be very soon, or it might be far away, or it might take your whole life searching for it. Chiron thinks about it and smiles, and Armin tells him, don't worry, you'll find it very soon, especially now that you have great power. It's a matter of time. Chiron smiles and asks, could it be related to the white threads and strange lights I see in my dreams? Armin is surprised and says, I think this might be related to the symmetry scale. Chiron is puzzled and asks, what is this thing, Mr. Armin? Armin explains, scientists believe that the whole world operates according to fixed physical rules that can be proven by mathematical laws, like the speed of light law that never changes. But over time, scientists discovered that it's not that simple, and these laws can be said to have been broken. At this moment, Chiron remembers Aki's words about an unknown world full of possibilities, and that nothing is 100% certain. Armin continues, we're not in a perfect world, but something or someone has broken the laws of this world. It might be you, or it might be someone or something else. But if it's you, you'll certainly know what you need over time. All you need to do now is think about it a little. Chiron says, thank you very much, Armin, for everything you've done, but why don't you want to tell Olivia that you can see? He replies, these are personal reasons. I want her to stop worrying about me and look at her life and stop feeling guilty. She has a family now, and she still feels she's wrong. Please keep this secret, Chiron. Afterwards, we see that Armin has finished the painting, and they say goodbye as they leave. We learn that these are his last days in this house, and he'll be moving to another house soon. Olivia tells him she'll send him letters there, and he agrees, saying he'll reply immediately. At this moment, Armin's wife arrives. She looks a bit strange and says to Armin, who among the great masters would have imagined that Armin, Eyes of Light, has all these overwhelming emotions? Armin tells her, finish it and tell me what you found. She says, we need to leave Chris and go to Kiel outside, but there are many small movements on the way, though they won't be a big problem. Armin, Eyes of Light. She adds, isn't it better to call you Eternal Soul Seeker? Armin tells her, be quiet and stop being stupid, to the contract until the end. She asks him, you haven't told Olivia anything, have you? He reassures her, don't worry. She reminds him, don't forget that the lives of those you love are at stake. He confirms again, I told you not to worry. We then see the students with teacher Olivia returning, but her mood is bad. They decide to sit together to eat somewhere to cheer her up, as she's sad about Armin's distance and that she won't be able to meet him again. The teacher agrees and says, let's go to the restaurant and eat until our stomachs burst. 2 hours later, we hear Chiron and his colleagues trying to prevent Olivia from drinking more juice because she's drunk too much. Let's go back in time 2 hours to understand what happened when Chiron was asking the teacher if she would drink juice. Replies, problem. Can you enter other people's houses and I can't drink some juice? He responds, take your time. Today is a holiday. Do what you want. Chiron is immersed in the delicious food. The important thing is, they were trying to get her out of her current state. Olivia starts to cry a little and says, even if you're talented, there are many talented people who can't achieve their dreams. I think I'm a bad teacher, but I've done everything for you. Orky and Shirin interrupt her saying, no, you're not a bad teacher at all. After that, she suddenly lost consciousness. After a while, when they finished eating, Orky says, we finished eating, and she hasn't woken up yet. Shiron tries to wake her up and call her name. A man with blonde hair comes from behind and says, it seems this lady is unconscious and in critical condition. I think I'll have to take her with me in the car. His servant replies, yes, of course, sir, but we'll only take the lady, and they laugh together. Shiron responds sharply, There's no need to do that at all. The man replies, "What's this talk? Tell these children to stay out of adult matters." The servant asks for help to move the teacher quickly, saying, "She looks beautiful while sleeping." Chiron forcefully stops his hand and says in a threatening tone, "Don't you dare touch our teacher." The man pulls his hand back and says, "How dare you do that, child?" He then says loudly, "Are you students even allowed to be here? Go sleep in your mother's arms. I can have you expelled from the academy with just one word from me." Nate tries to hit the man, the blow before it reaches him, and angrily says, "You'd better shut your mouth or you'll regret it." The servant is surprised and says, "Sir, be careful. They're from the Aleph Magic Academy." Orky decides to steal the man's wallet and mentions his full name, Douglas Silver, the administrative officer in Crease. Douglas responds, "How did you take my wallet like that?" Orky replies, "You're actually a government employee? If you want to expel us from the academy, go and ask about Merrick Don Rocky, and I'll be with you till the end." Then he throws the wallet in his face. Douglas shows signs of terror and fear and says in a hesitant voice, "That family that has been running the Royal Advisory Agency for 3 generations." He and the servant start running away. Rocky responds, "Why don't you show off your power like you were doing just now?" Ned says, "Why did you mention your family name when I know you hate mentioning it?" Rocky replies, "There are exceptions like this case. The food was delicious today and I'm in a good mood. I don't want anyone to ruin it." Nate takes a picture of the sleeping teacher and exclaims happily, "The perfect teacher has lost consciousness. This is a scoop." Orky asks, "Are you okay, Ned?" He replies, "We can use this to prevent our research group from being disbanded." Chiron says to them, "Sorry, why am I always the one carrying teacher Olivia?" Replies, "Why are you sad? I envy you for carrying her." Rocky adds, "Because you're the strongest among us. Ned can only take 10 steps before falling, and I can't even take 1 step while carrying her. Let me tell you something. Try using the diagram." Chiron responds, "Do you think I can use it whenever I want?" Rocky answers, "If you can use the spirit range, you can use the diagram. I'm sure you have the talent to do it." Ned interrupts, saying, "Yes, that's right. Wasn't there a magic warrior in the kingdom who used this method?" Chiron is surprised and says, "Really? If that's the case, I want to learn it." Orky continues, "First, close your eyes and focus on yourself. I'll ask you some guiding questions and try to follow my voice. First, try to feel yourself and then go deeper." Chiron immerses himself, and Rocky says to him, "Can you hear my voice? From now on, listen and respond to me." Chiron agrees, and Orky approaches him and asks, "Since when have you liked Sino Emmy?" Chiron comes out of his concentration and looks at Rocky, saying, "What are you saying?" Rocky laughs and says, "As if they're compatible. They're literally opposites of each other." A little later, Chiron says to Ned and Orky, "Let's give up using a specific weakness as a way to prevent the team from being dissolved." Ned replies, "How can you say this? You know it was already difficult for you to take this picture." Chiron responds, "As you know, for teacher Olivia, today was difficult and sad for her." Rocky agrees, saying, "She really didn't want us to go through the evening she went through." Ned sighs and says, "Okay, I understand. Although this group was left to me by the previous president, and if it's dissolved while I'm in charge, really bad for me. But I'll agree with what you're saying." Then he throws the picture into the river and says, "I'm confident we'll be able to prevent our team from being dissolved. Let's do our best." Suddenly, Olivia wakes up and says, "What are you doing?" Everyone is startled. Chiron asks her, "Are you awake?" She replies, "I'm sorry. I know I was very heavy for you. Anyway, I'll make the problems you caused at school small and won't punish you." Everyone can't believe it and says, but Olivia gives them a deadline. "From now on, I'll give you an extra month. If you can show me or bring before me a ghost or any spiritual thing, and if you really love your research group by showing that these things are real, this is your last chance." Chiron is surprised, but Ned laughs and accepts the challenge, saying, "Okay, through any research presentation or anything else, I'll prove the value of our research group." Rocky laughs and says, "Looks like I'll have to use my mental abilities seriously this time." Olivia encourages them, saying, "Come on, students, give it a try." Ned replies, "Don't worry, we'll actually bring a ghost." Agreed? Chiron hears their words and drifts off, saying, "Although nothing has changed, I feel very comfortable." Orky asks the teacher, "When did you wake up, teacher? How can a 6th grade witch faint so quickly?" The day ends, and after several days at Alpheus Magic Academy, puzzled by the new announcement, many voices overlap, saying, "What is this? For the love of French fries? A research presentation? Since when did Chiron join this research group? Wait, even a rock is in it, but it's a supernatural spiritual research group. What is this announcement?" After 10 days at the student headquarters, we find Near holding his head and shouting loudly, "Think of anything." As for Orky, he shows signs of lack of sleep and says, "Regardless of the time we waste in meetings all night, how haven't we been able to produce any useful ideas? Even if some cases are real, we can't even replicate them in presentations." Chiron is deep in thought, and we go back a little to the past, 3 days after setting the date with teacher Olivia. It was good to compete fairly in the presentation, but what we're looking for is supernatural spirit science. How do we show what can't be seen? He says to himself, "Because of the teacher, all the club members have gone crazy, and I can no longer continue with this. Suddenly, Chiron screams in fear and falls off the chair due to the lightning shadow skill that spies in the form of Ned. Ned laughs hard and says, "How about we trick them with this skill as if it were a ghost?" Chiron replies, "I was surprised when my eyes saw his eyes." Rocky says, "Do you think wizards would be afraid of something like this?" Ned replies, "Of course, even Chiron was fooled by it now. Let's agree that he was fooled for at least 2 seconds." Chiron realizes something and says, "There's no need to check if they're afraid or not." Ned agrees, saying, "All we need now is to find Teacher Olivia's weakness again." Orky says, "That's not a good idea." Chiron interrupts them, saying, "I wasn't scared because of the surprise. I felt scared because one of the expectations I was thinking about became real before my eyes." Ned asks him to explain in detail, so he says, "We don't need to try to convince them. We just need to realize even one possibility that exists in their hearts." Rocky says, "You want to change the system. I'm not trying to believe this, but I'm trying to meet your expectations." Chiron confirms, "Yes, exactly. We'll wage a kind of psychological warfare on them." Ned is very happy and grabs Chiron, saying loudly, "You really saved our research group. You're the pride of our group." Chiron responds in disgust, "Get away from me. You haven't showered in 3 days." Rocky says, "It's really an out-of-the-box idea. But if it works, you're truly a genius. But the problem is that this kind of cheap magic here can't make it move in a scarier way." Ned replies, "Problem. If I use lightning continuously like this and starts moving in a strange way." He adds, "If you use it 24 times per second, you'll be able to make smooth movements like animation." Chiron objects, "This won't work. This guy hasn't slept or showered in 3 days. He's gone completely mad." Then he wonders, "Can't we do this with a mechanical device?" Ned answers, "I thought about that a while ago, but there's one problem. We can put a program in the device to move the hologram. It'd be useful if it doesn't interact with people's movements and emotions." Chiron agrees, saying, "Indeed, I only got scared when my eyes met his." Iraq interrupts, saying, "I have the solution." Everyone is really surprised. He continues, "We can do it if we predict people's movements and reactions. It's a theory that might be a bit complex, but if we analyze all the personal behavior patterns of each individual and program them, we'll be able to predict the situation and create reactions based on that." Chiron looks to his right, and the ghost appears on the right, their eyes meeting. Chiron replies, "Can you really do it like this?" Iraq answers, "The lifestyles in this school are all similar. If you want to do it, you can do it easily, but there will be a huge amount of information, and we'll need very large storage units. Therefore, we need something through which we can send all this information to multiple devices." Ned says, "My magical energy won't be entirely sufficient." Chiron adds, "But I can use the Fawn Converter." Chiron remembers when Teacher Olivia told him that the magic tower that tops the first center in magic centers, expected to produce photons and convert them in information and communication technology, is light. She said it's the best way to transfer information. Ned says excitedly, "Finally, I'll be able to create the perfect ghost." But Rocky interrupts his joy, saying, "I don't think just surprising them with one ghost is enough. Do you have any other plans, Chiron?" Chiron replies, "This is just an opinion, but what if we play a psychological trick on them?" He starts writing something on paper. Ned and Rocky are surprised by him, and Ned says, "You're really amazing, Chiron. I couldn't even write a presentation like the one you wrote." Rocky says, "If this presentation and idea succeed, the whole academy will turn about 180 degrees. The rest of the team gets excited and says, "Okay, it's decided." Ned says, "I'll make the required device from now, and you, Chiron, will transfer the information. Finally, we'll be able to save our group." But Iraq gives them a book and says, "Do you know that I calculated approximately the amount of photons Chiron is supposed to output per second to transfer the data? We need about 3 times what he's capable of now, and we'll need to continue it for a full 10 minutes. Do you think we'll really be able to do something like this?" Chiron says loudly, surprised, "10 minutes!" After 10 days, currently in the group's private residence, Ned enters his team's room and says loudly, "Guys, the poster we made is spreading everywhere, and everyone is excited about it." Iraq appears, exhausted from all the equations and studying and calculating behavior patterns all day. Chiron is also very tired from training to output photons all day. He responds to Ned saying, "What are you saying?" Ned continues, "It's been a huge success, and everyone is coming to see it." Rocky says, "Damn, is this because of the name or what? Extra people will increase our workload. Anyway, how many people do you expect to attend?" Ned answers happily, "I'm not sure honestly, but maybe more than half of the entire academy will attend." Rocky faints from shock. Let's now know that there are only 17 days left for the presentation they have to give. Will they be able to present it or not, and will it save their group? Moving outside the academy, rumors about the announcement are everywhere. People say Chiron and Hiroki are in the same group, and the show will be amazing, not ordinary. Everyone wonders what they'll show the audience. Purple-haired girl walking to a secluded place in the school. Someone behind a wall asks her, "Is it true this group has a presentation presentation? She answers, "We don't know if this group will be revived, but if this presentation fails, their room and lab will be given back to the school." The person replies, "Indeed, this club is finished. It's too old, and their former glory is gone forever." Another person joins in, saying, "You never know what might happen. With Sharon and Iraqi, and two great talents like that, we can't ignore Indadi's skill." The second person laughs and says, "At least they're low-level students. All we need to worry about is what happens next." The second king lasts is close to starting a group war.